Hey guys, Pete here. Let's talk about the fifth episode of Better Call Saul's final season. 605 marks the return of Lalo. We got some charm and menace from south of the border, and who knew, but he has a very serviceable American accent that he can draw on when he needs it. Last week, we had a lot of interesting stuff dealing with identity and appearances and how the characters saw themselves. This week, there was a continuation of all the paranoia and also a lot of plans being made with people anticipating their opponent's next move. Some stuff going on with that. And I mentioned in my recap that this episode felt a little flat for me in some areas. It wasn't my favorite of the season. Part of that was I was pretty sure that Lalo was in Germany. That wasn't a big surprise. I had been talking about that either directly or alluding to it since the first week after I read one of the Peter Gould interviews. So there was really no surprise. And I'm not sure how much of that, took away from my experience, my enjoyment. And so I wanted to see what some other people thought. I have my guests here. We all have differing opinions on this episode, so that should make it interesting. And why don't we do our introductions and you can give us your overall take on the episode, and then I'll come back and respond to those. We do have a first time guest today, but Gil, why don't you go first?
Sounds good. I'm Gil from the OneTake YouTube channel, or I'm also one half of the Saulcast podcast. And the episode actually worked really well for me. I didn't know or have any inkling that Lalo was in Germany. So I think that helped. There was some mystery for me. But even putting that aside, all of the Jimmy, Kim, Howard stuff also worked really well for me. I found the episode similar in tone to last week in the sense that there were a lot of laughs, at least for me, but there was also a constant sense of foreboding. I feel like the entire series has kind of had a dark cloud over it because we know where it ends for Saul and we know it's not a good place. But as that's starting to take more specific shape, we're waiting for what's going to happen with Howard, what's going to happen with Lalo. Both of those are kind of ticking time bombs that we assume are going to somehow be a stepping stone into Breaking Bad, into Kim and Jimmy's ultimate fates. So I have been feeling a sort of constant dread and stress as we get closer and closer to those bombs going off. And I think we see a few significant moments of approaching, D-Day. Howard finds out that Jimmy and Kim are plotting against him. We see that Lalo is kind of circling that proof he's looking for. So as we get closer, I'm really feeling it. Now, where I think there's some subjectivity in how much you'll enjoy these episodes, we have to be patient as we wait for those things to happen. And in the meantime, the two things that are allowing me to be patient are, one, visually, the show has been a ton of fun. Even just the cold open to this episode, I thought was sort of a masterfully done visual sequence where it was fun to watch. It was mysterious. And at the same time, it acted as almost a memorial to the Werner character. It's also been funny the last couple of episodes. When Howard's at the Sandpiper meeting and Cliff is watching him so nervously, I kind of couldn't stop laughing anytime those two characters were on screen together. And the last thing I'll mention that's keeping me kind of interested while we play the waiting game is I feel like these characters are, as they approach the end, we're getting moments of them kind of taking stock, looking back on the path that got them here. For example, I think Jimmy mentioning the nuns back in Cicero, I think that gives us a little window into where his mind is at. It all has to be very subtle because these characters are not the type to openly discuss what they're thinking and what they're feeling. So it's all going to come out in very subtle ways. But I think we're seeing these characters reckon with themselves. We're seeing what other people think of these characters, like Jimmy at the courthouse last week, like Howard so clearly looking down on Jimmy this episode. So all of that stuff is keeping me interested while I wait for those bombs to go off. And even when I'm laughing, I feel very uncomfortable as we get closer and closer to that. So I was a fan of the episode and still very curious to see where things go.
All right. And so you can go ahead and introduce yourself, Chase.
Hey guys, Kiwi here. So I'm from the channel TheVividKiwi, but my name's also Chase. You can call me whatever you like. Thanks so much for having me on the stream, Pete. I'm excited to get into episode 605 and share how I feel about it. So just to quickly summarize my opinions before we go in depth, I really enjoyed this episode a lot more than 604. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. I loved the Hamlin versus Goodman fight. It was great to finally see that from the trailers. The Cliff and Howard confrontation was satisfying. I was also waiting for that for a few episodes. Saul hiring Francesca was great. Glad to see her return finally. And the Hollow situation, it just had me on the edge of my seat. My heart was racing. If I had to rank this on a tier list, which I will for my episode review, spoilers for that, I'd give this episode just a strong A tier.
Fair enough. I just before I come back to that, I just wanted to thank Mike Camparillo for the $20 super chat. He says, "Great live stream, Pete. A powerhouse of the most insightful commentators on BCS. Thank you so much and keep up the great work." And thank you for that. We really appreciate it, and it's a great to have everybody here today. One of the reasons I decided to bring Kiwi on this week was because he sent me a really enthusiastic message about the episode, and I was sitting there. I was just getting ready to write my script for my recap, and I was just thinking like, I'm not sure where I think this might be my least favorite, and so I thought that was a good entry point because we had been talking about getting together and talking about BCS and their
Right.
schedules and everything else to think about. But I thought this was a good time because we have a little bit of a differing opinion, and I think that from to say that I thought it was the worst of the season, that's a little bit different than it was bad television or I didn't enjoy it. There was a lot that I did enjoy, and we'll be touching on those things. But I think one of the things that I thought about whenever I was writing when I was putting my recap together was there's this that we're behind the characters. They're keeping us behind the characters, and we don't know what they're planning. And because this show it makes them so complicated and so hard to read at times. There's a distance between us and where they're at. So I thought that that can be uncomfortable. Like if you think about the beginning of season 4, when Jimmy's doing all this really weird stuff and you don't understand why he's doing it, and it turns out that he doesn't understand why he's doing it either. I think here, like what you're saying, Gil, it does, this is a show that we know for sure rewards patience. This isn't this I'm not confused on that. I'm not worried that, oh my God, they're gonna they're gonna crash the plane into the side of the mountain or whatever. I just think that uh it's a little bit uncomfortable, the place that they have us in, as far as not really knowing what's going on with these people. um I like what you mentioned there about the nuns too, about them thinking about their past. The cold open was really fantastic. I didn't know what to expect, but because like I said, before episode 3, we're trained to know that if we see something there, it's going to be important and they're going to tell us this story. So I kind of think that we're in that same position in in this season, right? Like we know all this stuff is going to be important. We know there's going to be a payoff, and it's going to be like, okay, now I understand. But I just felt like this episode dragged at a couple of points. So I think, unless you have anything that you want to add there, either one of you, we can just jump right in and kind of go through what happened as soon as we look at these super chats. Did you want to add anything else?
No, I'm good to just get right into the nitty and gritty of it.
Same here.
Okay, so what do we got here? We have Matt Polikin, 499. Of all the lawyers that have been on the show, who would you pick to represent you? Chuck McGill, if he was alive. Don't really Can't really say I'd want to hang out with him all that much, but he can definitely litigate. What about you guys?
I'd have to go with I would say Kim Wexler, but Kim Wexler, that's letting her Giselle side out, because if someone's representing me, I want them to be willing to do whatever it takes, including a fake letter writing campaign from Kushada, the way they got
Yeah.
Huel off. So, I was going to say Jimmy, but I think ultimately, if you're willing to take your gloves off and do whatever it takes, Kim is ultimately the strategist that can think ahead even further than Jimmy McGill.
So,
What about you, Chase?
I was originally thinking about choosing Howard, but we haven't really actually seen him do much, lawyering in the courtroom in this show. He's usually outside of the courtroom at HHM or something like that. I mean, I just feel like I'd have to choose Saul Goodman just because I love his wacky antics, like in season 5, how he got someone on the stand to mistake who the witness was, and I would just love to see some sort of scheme like that happen in person.
Yeah, I think Jimmy would be the most fun to work with. I think Kim in Chuck's, now that Chuck is no longer around, I think Kim would probably be the most solid option. I think what you're saying there about Howard is true, and we're going to touch on that, I think, a little bit later, because we do see what he's good at in this episode. We see a fantastic example of it. And yeah, I don't think the courtroom is really where he excels. So I wouldn't, if I needed him to hype me up or, get interest in whatever I was doing, I would definitely think about bringing him on board. And we have
Yeah,
one other one.
I
Go
was just
ahead.
gonna say he's quite the salesman, that's for sure. Seems like Jimmy's not the only person that's good with elders.
Yeah, for sure. And we have another one here. Thank you for the 4.99, Sachin Paul. Do you think the show is getting a bit out of hand with cold opens and montages? Some of them make no sense and exist just for the sake of it. Um, no, not for me. Do either of you guys have a problem with the cold opens or the montages?
For me, go ahead, Chase.
I don't know, I mean, sometimes it can get a little bit self-indulgent, and sometimes it can just be, you don't really understand what's going on at first, but by the time you get to the end of the episode, suddenly it all makes sense. I do kind of like moments like that, especially since I do usually rewatch the episode immediately after seeing it for the first time and go through it in depth while doing all my videos. So I do kind of appreciate what they're going with there, but yeah, sometimes it can be just a little bit self-indulgent, especially with the cinematography, even though it is really good. I don't really think it's a waste of time or anything like that. I love the song choices too for the show. Like, I got a whole playlist of Better Call Saul songs. I jam out to them sometimes in my spare time to help me, get motivated to make the videos. And I don't know, I definitely enjoy it overall. They do a really good job, especially since it's mainly the same people that did Breaking Bad, so they have all of that history on their belts. So feel like their montages and kind of their teasers just honestly get better and better. But yeah, a little bit self-indulgent for sure.
Yeah, and I'd add just that I understand where this comment is coming from. If I were to try and just objectively criticize the show, you could definitely say the cold open from this week could be removed and zero plot progression would be lost. And typically, in filmmaking 101, they'd say every scene has to have momentum and progress things in some way. But if I put that aside and just say, did it work for me or not? Every cold open has worked one way or another. If I take this week's, for example, just the first time I watched it, there was a sense of mystery and a sense of melancholy. So I was feeling that. And I was asking myself at first, it looks kind of black and white. Is this some kind of a gene flash forward? No, okay, it's not that. Now I see chemicals being mixed, which in the world of Breaking Bad, the first place your mind goes is drugs, meth. Are we seeing something involving Gale maybe? Then I saw the slide rule and realized, okay, maybe this has something to do with Werner. So the first time I watched it, it was 3 minutes of just trying to figure out what I'm seeing, and it was exciting. Now, knowing the context of it, I watched it again today, and like I mentioned earlier, it felt like a sort of memorial to Werner in the same way that the cold open in the Nacho episode felt like a sort of memorial to that character. So I understand where the comment is coming from, but I just can't deny the fact that they've worked for me. And I could even see myself rewatching some of them in the future to just kind of remember the show and just remember some of the audio visual treats the show has given us.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of the teasers. I think that they added dimension to things, and I could maybe get on board with montages. They heavily relied and maybe overused those at a point, but I don't think that they've been doing a lot of montages in season 6. Am I right about that? Would you guys say?
They've used a couple, like when they were doing the key duplication, but it wasn't really a montage
It
to
wasn't the
progress a
same
lot of
style though.
time.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a little bit of a montage, but I don't think it's the sort that you're referring to.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, they have died down a little bit. Mainly, I'm thinking of season 2 during the episode where Kim first gets Mesa Verde as a client. We have 2 montages of her just calling people to try and get a client in that episode. So yeah, they definitely did it a bit more earlier on for sure.
yeah, I felt like they had dialed that down a little bit this season. And yeah, the like I said, I'm pro teaser. I love that. Last week there was some images of this, and I got my video got dinged, like they quit showing it to people because I mentioned that there might have been a different chemical process going on there, which was I was definitely surprised at what was actually going on there. When we'll talk about that later, but I think it adds to something for me. I like to have that idea in my head. It's not a lot of time. Like I'm not really worried about them being like efficient with the amount of time. Like they can make it. It worked as far as the progression of the episode went on for me. But yeah, I mean, I've seen that in the comments. Sometimes people don't go for them. So why don't we jump right in, and we'll start out talking about the characters and what they did this week. And we'll start out with Mr. Fring. Um, his first sequence was showing his paranoia at the restaurant at Los Pollos. He is like not really. I mean, he knows that Lalo's alive in his mind, he or his heart, he feels like he knows that, but there's no news, nothing's coming in, so he's just kind of walking around freaking out. And one of the weak parts of this for me, and I think for viewers in general, is that we know that he's not in any danger whatsoever. We know how his story ends. So what's interesting, where this will get interesting will be how he gets out of this situation. So here, we see him. He's kind of trying to go about his day, is going about his business, and it's not really taking his mind off of it. And he hears one of his customers he mentions Spice Girls to one of his customers, and then he sort of spaces out completely. So what are you guys thinking about this place where Gus is? Is that working for you, or what do you think?
I think one of the things they're showing us about Gus this season, and we've seen flashes of it before, is what he does when he's uncomfortable and nervous. And part of the difficulty here is that what's driving him so crazy is having to sit there and wait and not know when Lalo is going to show up. So we're there with him, but to your point, we know that he's not in mortal danger. So I can see why you'd say that's where maybe some of the patience starts to wear thin. And probably, if I'm being honest with myself, where was I least engaged in the episode? It may have been here, because we've seen this from Gus before when he broke the glass, for example, that Nacho went on to use. We've kind of seen him rattled. So how much more do we need to see that? But thankfully, by the end of this episode, he finally has the epiphany, and at least I think is starting to suspect that that Lalo can't strike, that Lalo needs to get proof first, and he's starting to anticipate Lalo's next move.
Yeah, so
Okay.
there's a few times that we see Gus's OCD come into play this episode. The first with him putting his pen just perfectly on his Los Pollos desk, and then later, at the safe house scrubbing the top of the bathtub with a toothbrush. It's definitely symbolic of his paranoia and anxiety caused by his uncertainty of Lalo, but really reminded me also of Lyle scrubbing those deep fryers in season 5. And to add what you were saying, Pete, like we know how the story will end. We know Lalo's alive. We know more than the characters. I've heard the creators of the show discuss this issue where eventually it does get to a breaking point where they have to catch the characters up to speed with the audience. And I think we'll hopefully get that soon. But mentioning Lyle, I love that we see him again this episode. Ever since they made him play a larger part in season 5, makes sense they'd keep him around. But I'm glad to see that he's still employed and doing well after that traumatic experience last season with Gus. I really do connect to smaller characters much more than other shows. And then when Gus started zoning out at the customer, I half expected the customer to get mad at him, but we didn't end up seeing that. Then when Gus mentioned the Spice Girls, my buddy Phil mentioned how it sounded like Gus said Spice Girls, which really just made me laugh. And to be honest, after watching episode 605, I was craving some Los Pollos, so went out and got some Popeyes. Was the closest thing I could get, sadly. And then just as far as Gus freaking out, I'm not entirely sure why he marched outside. I guess he just needed some fresh air after zoning out, but kind of gave me similar vibes to when Gus stood out in front of the sniper in Breaking Bad, although this was obviously much less intense.
Yeah, that's a good connection there. I hadn't thought about that, but I did listen to most of the Insider podcast today, and they were talking about that scene where he walks outside and him just being like, I'm done with this. I'm done, waiting, basically. He was coming to that realization that he needed to act. And I thought that maybe this is, whenever I was, doing my video, I thought maybe this is like, he says Spice Curls. That's something that he introduced at the Madrigal meeting that we saw in season 5. So that made me think that perhaps he's thinking about Madrigal, he's thinking about Germany, and that's where he's starting to put together, that how Gus is, or how Lalo is going to go about finding proof. And
Ooh, I like that. I like that. I didn't think about that. Nice catch.
Because he says Spice Curls, and then he just that's whenever he like zones out and turns his head. So there might be something to that.
I think that I'll second that theory, because I think this show, I mentioned it earlier, but it can't crack open a character's head and show us what they're thinking. And also, these characters so often don't talk about what they're thinking. So one of this show's go-to tricks is to use objects or items that tell us what's on their mind. The most popular example is, of course, the Zafiro on Yeho's stopper. Anytime Kim looks at it, she's thinking about being Giselle. She's thinking about the fuel that kind of took Jimmy and her to where they are now. So it wouldn't surprise me if they're doing that again with the Spice Curls. That's what indicates to us. What's that?
The Spice Curls.
That's right. That's what tells Gus, or that's what tells us that he's now thinking about Madrigal.
I'm not gonna lie, I keep hearing you guys say Spice Girls every time you mention the curls. I just hear Spice Girls. I can't.
I'm doing it on purpose to try and drive you a little crazy.
and that's working. That's a branding decision, right? If you name your product Spice Curls, that's what you're hoping for, right? You're trying to ride the coattails of that famous pop band from, I don't even know, the 1990s, maybe 2000.
It definitely does have that similar association. Gets stuck in your head.
Yeah, so we have a super chat here from Soul Empire for $2. Thank you for that. And this is a little off topic, but we'll talk about it now before we move into the next thing. And he wants to know if Nacho's dad's safe. Hector knows where he is. Skull emoji. So what do you guys think? Gil and I actually talked about this quite a bit whenever that episode happened, and Adam was here and Jim also. We all kind of threw in our thoughts on that. And we at the end of that conversation, we kind of thought that it's possible that they'll never really mention him again. And that's what it kind of feels like right now, is that part of the story is concluded. Where are you at right now, Gil? Like, where is that how it feels to you, or do you think there's more lurking in in that part of the story?
Yeah, no, I still feel that way. I mean, I'm humble about it. I've been so surprised by the show so many times, But yeah, right now my impression is the book is closed on that story. Maybe there's a kind of epilogue to it where at some point we can see that Mike is doing something to check in on Nacho's father and ensure that he's safe. We've also seen in the past that Mike did not like the fact that the Good Samaritan that was killed by Hector was just buried and his family didn't know what happened to him. So he went out to the desert, found the body, made an anonymous call to the police to report it. So maybe he'll try to find some subtle way to give Nacho's father a closure and ensure his safety. So I could see it. I'm not predicting it, but at the same time, I've been surprised by this show many, many times. So who knows?
How about you, Chase?
Yeah. Yeah, so in regards to that, I was pretty surprised that we got the week or two time skip between episodes 3 and 4 because I honestly thought that episode 4 would start up with kind of the aftermath of the whole Nacho arc. I even thought that we might have seen Mike going back there afterwards, maybe burying Nacho's body. I would have liked to know more about how Gus gave the excuse that they captured Nacho when the Salamanca twins were chasing them the whole time, and suddenly Gus has him now. I mean, I know they did beat him up, but I just kind of wanted more of an explanation for that. And then also about Nacho's dad. It as much as Mike says he wants to protect him, it's hard to, protect someone with a sniper scope 24/7 unless he has, people hired on his own terms to try and fulfill that promise. I did really think that we'd see more of it, but now it's kind of just seeming like it's a bookend and they're gonna move on. So who knows, honestly, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they would need to have a reason. I think is where I'm at. I think that they it would be nice if they touched on it, but they would have to have a reason that made sense. And right now, at least, Hector and the cousins, they're not a major factor in what's going on because it's all like, Lalo is this thing that sucks all the air out of the room, and we all know it's going in that direction, like, showdown between Lalo and Gus. So it just kind of will depend on how he reconnects with his family and how that plays into things, I guess. We have another one here from Francisco Chung. This is a question, which is pretty easy to answer. Did I miss something? How did Lalo find out about the building of the super lab and Werner's involvement? He learned that when he first joined the show back in season 4. I think it was 409 and 4010. He started following Mike around. He knew Gus might be up to something. So when he first came to the U.S., he started looking into things, and he followed Mike, and he killed Fred at the travel wire. That's why he's on the run right now, because he eventually gets caught for that. And so in that process, he actually talked to Werner on the phone, and he heard something about a south wall and keeping the job going, and that Kai would be be able to lead the crew while he was out of town or whatever. So that's where that came from. We got a couple more here. Al Washburn, thank you for the $20. That is very generous. 2 Kim questions I meant to ask earlier, but missed the streams when the 88 approaches Kim about Jimmy. Do you think she reviewed Lalo's visitor log and knew Kim went to see him? Do you think this plays into where Kim ends up? It's very possible. I don't know. I've seen this pop up a lot in people asking this question. They didn't really bring the ADA stuff into this week, so it's a little hard to see where they're going with that. But I think this is a fair question. I'm not sure that I have a strong inclination of whether she did it or not yet. Chase, do you have anything about, like, do you have a strong feeling one way or the other?
Yeah, well, I think this is actually a really interesting question, and I really do
Yeah.
wonder too, because there has to be some sort of proof that, Kim went in and she went in as her actual name. And if Suzanne Erickson is putting together all of these pieces of all the people Jimmy's helped and she's talking to Kim about it, you'd think that, she'd put two and two together, maybe check and see who visited Lalo at least. And I mean, we didn't actually see Suzanne Erickson this episode, but we kind of saw the aftermath of it with not a lot of people liking Jimmy at the courthouse, and all that. And I wonder how that info got leaked. It's just kind of common knowledge now. Suzanne, maybe is she doing kind of a dirty plan here, kind of turning everyone at the courthouse against Jimmy because he won't work with her?
Yeah, that was my take, that she was doing that intentionally in the same way, and it kind of mirrored what, Kim and Jimmy were doing to Howard. And like you said, it is an interesting question that I just don't know that we have enough information, because yeah, he wouldn't even have had a lot of guests, you know what I mean? Because he had a cell phone inside, so he was talking to the other criminals that way. So it's not like if she looked at his guest list, like it could maybe just be him, Jimmy and Kim and nobody else. You don't really know. Gil, did you have anything you wanted to add to this one?
Not really. I mean, I agree with everything you guys said. It's definitely an open thread. I don't think we've finished with that storyline. That's a point I hadn't thought of, that of course the ADA can see that Kim visited Lalo. So right now she's approaching it from, Kim, you better get your husband to talk. We're not building a case against him right now, but dot dot dot. When that doesn't work, maybe the ADA at some point will try to turn the temperature up on Kim herself. So it's a great question.
Yeah, it's public information, so it's always something to keep in the back of your mind. And Al has a second question and another $20. So thank you again for that. In 506, it opens with the Kim flashback. I still struggle to understand what the writers were trying to tell us. What do you think the implications are, and how do you think they relate to how she is, which seems so far from that? Um, I think that it just shows that, she kind of goes into this a little bit when she talks with Acker, but I think that it shows that there was, her childhood was a little, it was filled with uncertainty. She couldn't really rely on the people that you need to rely on when you're a child. We don't see a mention, or there's no indication about a father here, and her mother is obviously, has a drinking problem. So that was that was my biggest takeaway. I mean, generally, whenever you have a situation like that, you want to be different than the person that has, whose behavior has, affected you in that way. And perhaps that's another thing of her trying to not be the kind of person that her mother is. Gil, do you have anything you want to talk about as far as that?
Yeah, there's one. Agree with all of that. And the thing I'd add to this, and this is partially inspired by something Tom Schnauz, the writer of this episode, said, which is that he saw that opening as implying Kim may have walked away from her mother, and that relationship was never reconciled between them.
Mm.
That cold open was in the same episode where it was Wexler v. McGill. So at the end of that episode, Kim suggests to Jimmy that they get married. And that was after Jimmy really betrayed her trust. So when they have the tense argument at the end of the episode and she's yelling at him, I fully expected her to say, "We're through." And instead, she goes the other way. So connecting that with the cold open, I think that maybe Kim regrets the way she left things with her mother, that she was never able to repair that relationship. And now she's
Mm.
almost correcting too far the other way, where it's going to take a lot for her to just give up on a relationship. She gave up on her mother. She regretted it. And now with Jimmy, she's not going to do that again. So even if Jimmy does something that deserves getting him dumped, really betraying her, she's not going to walk away.
Yeah, so
An
this is
interesting take. Yeah.
this is really a loaded question, because usually with for example, Kim and Howard with their past, I mean, it's kind of mysterious, right? We don't know too much about their past, and usually when they drop little hints about it, it's kind of just during small talk, maybe something that a casual viewer might miss, such as, Kim talking to Mr. Acker, or back in season 2, I believe, with the Rich Schweikart interview. And Howard this season talking to his therapist about his wife and possibly his father. But this is really the first time that they took, Kim's past into, front and center. And I think it does play a part of the whole "you don't save me, I save me." Kim was very independent from a young age. I think that's a good point you made, Gil, where maybe she's estranged with her mother. I don't even know if her mom is still alive. Like, for all we know, she could have died in a car crash, a drunk driving car crash. Could be something that is just permanently unresolved. And thing about Kim is we don't know if she was always a goody two shoes. Maybe she could have been, Giselle or Slip and Kimmy growing up, and then she decided to go on the straight and narrow, as she said with the Rich interview. She didn't want to work at the Hinky Dinky or whatever that store was. So we don't really know too much about Kim's past, and it's possible that she might have a dark past. But I do think that this cold open with her as a kid really does show her independence with, willing to walk home by herself at night.
Yeah, those are all good. Those are all good points, and we did talk about that a little bit last week. Some of those same things, and that's kind of one of the things. I don't want to linger here too long, but this next question is about Kim too. And Space Windu, thank you for the $10. Asks, I'm starting to think, or says, I'm starting to think Kim will be in jail in the Breaking Bad timeline. And the the mystery of Kim, that this is where we're at. I mean, this is what this is the last big question, you know what I mean? And I think that I was complaining a little bit about being behind the characters, but this is the one where I'm kind of okay with where we're at, because there's just so much riding on what we learn about those things, like when we learn about what her history was. Does she really have a dark side that she's been suppressing, and all of that stuff? So the idea of her being in jail, that is definitely something that I have thought might be the best theory about it. I mean, you kind of say that, like I said, with an asterisk of like, hey, but we don't really know yet. You know what I mean? But just with the information we have, the idea that that phone call is coming at a specific time, on Jimmy's birthday in the future and things like that. There's a lot there that kind of makes you think that it's possible, whenever that she might be in jail, and that's why that her and Jimmy aren't together in that timeline. What do you guys think? Let's just real rapid fire here. Gil, jail or no jail in the Breaking Bad timeline?
Jail.
It's possible, huh? And Chase?
Possible.
Yeah, it's just one of the many possibilities of Kim's fate. Is she in jail? Does she die? Is she still with Saul? I think she might take things too far, end up going to jail, because I don't think Kim dies, honestly, because Saul would be too depressed during Breaking Bad. But what would almost be worse for dying for her is getting disbarred and losing her job and losing, pretty much her whole self-worth. So I think that being in jail is almost a worse fate for her, and considering, it's kind of a tragic show, that might be the case.
Yeah.
One thing I'd add is if you ask me again in 10 minutes, my answer might be different because it is such a question mark. And like you said, it's one of the fun things of the show right now is it's really hard to predict where she's going to end up.
Someday, not too long, and in the not too distant future, we are going to know, and that's pretty exciting. So I guess to take it back to where we were at, Gus, we see Mike get snuck into his house. I like the little connection there with the people from last week, seeing her drive in with Mike in the back of the van, or the whatever that was, SUV, I guess. He's kind of tired of this because he's working hard out there and he can't get anything to there's nothing that he can learn about where Lalo is. Gus is freaking out. That's making everybody else kind of freaked out. I'd like to, what I liked here about this part was that, him not knowing where Lalo is what's causing him the problem. This is a guy who loves to be in control of everything. Like you mentioned, Chase, you mentioned like his OCD characteristics and some of the things that he does. He's definitely, he needs to be in control of things. So this is, incredibly uncomfortable for him. And one of the ways that he does, he has these little things that he does that take back control, like incrementally. Like he's literally with the toothbrush cleaning the grout in his shower because he can control whether that's clean or not, and then at the super lab we kind of see that, but on a bigger scale. He's coming to the idea that Lalo can't hurt him until he gets the proof. Otherwise, that's beyond what the cartel will allow to happen. So he makes that, he has that epiphany, or whatever, and he has a plan that I guess it's going to involve using that to his advantage and luring Lalo in, as far as I can tell. And so we see these steps of, taking back control. And, I liked how they illustrated him hiding the gun, where he finds the spot, he paces it off. He knows exactly where that is. It's implied that he could find that in the dark, maybe even if he needed to, because he knows exactly where it's at, and he's just that precise. So what do you guys think about this whole at home and at the super lab part of Gus's story here?
And for me, I agree with your entire read of the situation. So I feel like the only thing left to add is the question mark of what exactly is he planning there, because it's really hard to imagine that he intends on having a face off, like a classic Western duel where he's going to draw his gun from where he hit it and shoot Lalo in their eventual showdown. So I'm just really curious where that's going to go. And I'm also really wondering about the broader implications of it, because if you think about Gus versus Hector, that gave us a big window into Gus's psyche. We learned how pathologically he needed revenge against Hector. Obviously, it tied in this big tragic story for Nacho. So I can't imagine that all we have left from Lalo is Gus kills him, end of story. It has to be some major building block for Gus, Mike, Jimmy, or Kim. So very curious where it's going, both in the plot and in kind of the character development. The last thing I'll add is the last time we saw Gus plant a gun somewhere, it was essentially giving it to Nacho in the hopes that Nacho would shoot and invite return fire. So I wonder if there is a clever scheme going on where he wants Lalo to find the gun. Maybe there's a meeting with the cartel with Juan Bolsa, and Lalo gets backed into a corner, pulls the gun, and that gives Gus the excuse he needs to kill him and have the blessing of the cartel. That's like a half-baked idea I came up with a couple of hours ago, but just throwing it out there in case it ends up being right.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Well, first off, I do have a few more things to say about Gus and the toothbrush versus the grout. You can really tell he's just taking his aggression out with this toothbrush. It's almost like he's torturing himself, just doing anything that he can to get his mind off of the current situation. And it really is an elaboration of what you said, Pete, where he walks out from Los Pollos and he's just had enough. And I think him going to the super lab and planting that gun is part of that. Even though he has no updates, no news on Lalo, he wants to be proactive and do something himself just in case. Because it does he is suspicious that Lalo may be somehow looking for the super lab, which is why he hides that ankle gun there. I'm not sure why he counts his steps before doing so. But is it possible that we could have a Gus versus Lalo confrontation down in the super lab cave? Imagine how messed up it would be if Lalo dies down there and they build the super lab on top of his dead body, since the concrete isn't poured for the floor or the walls yet. It could really take a new meaning to putting up the south wall. It definitely makes me think. I mean, if this does happen, it would really make me think about Lalo whenever I see any super lab scene in Breaking Bad as well, just knowing that Lalo's body is underneath them.
Yeah, it's funny because there's been a couple of recurring theories that pop up on Reddit, and people have really, they don't like them, right? So Germany was one of them, and I think Gus or Lalo being buried in the south wall is another one. And I think you could even add to that, maybe Lalo seduces Mrs. Ziegler. Like, people were really against these ideas before, and now that the Lalo thing came true, I saw some. I haven't looked at Reddit too much since yesterday, but I saw some people bringing up the south wall that's guaranteed now, because obviously, the theories that they don't like are all coming true. But yeah, I think that there's something to that, that if I don't know if he's going to be buried in the south wall or any of that, but if he was killed down there, then, or even if there's just a major confrontation there, you would always think about that differently during the series, like you're saying, Chase. So I think from there, we might as well move along into Kim, because we still have a lot of ground to cover here. And let's go. You wanna switch it up a little bit? Do you wanna Gil, do you wanna to lead us through Kim, and then we'll have Chase lead us through Howard?
Sure, that sounds good.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, basically, Kim, towards the beginning of the episode, we see that she has that paranoia now that she knows Lalo is out there. So she does the old chair under the doorknob trick to prop their door shut. And Jimmy sees that paranoia, and he says that line that we mentioned earlier. He's glad that Lalo is dead, and Kim still doesn't tell him the truth. I guess we can pause there and just ask any thoughts on that scene before we go over to the Viola stuff.
I just wonder, what is actually motivating her to not telling Jimmy. Not that I need an answer to that question necessarily, but I think it's the question we're supposed to be asking, because we're seeing her act in ways that, it sort of just keeps getting ratcheted up. She's doing things that we never thought that we would see her do. And this is a kind of a big one, I think,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we've talked about it last week, and I think she's not going to tell Jimmy until she absolutely has to. And I think the reason she's not telling him is the same reason that Mike went to her with this information rather than Jimmy. We've seen in the past how Jimmy will act when he worries that Lalo is out there. He went to Mike's house, banged on his front door until he got some answers. Versus Kim, who said, we have to go on with our lives. What are we going to do? We can't just cower in fear forever. So right now, I think she's just carrying it herself, because she knows that there's a risk Jimmy will fall apart if he has to carry this burden. So until she needs to, I feel like she's going to keep it inside.
Honestly, Gil, I could not agree more. And yeah, just to quickly summarize my opinion from even last week's episode, I was initially surprised that she didn't tell Jimmy, but the more that I think about it, the more it makes sense, because on one hand, Kim's trying to protect Jimmy by keeping the secret from him. Jimmy's been feeling off of his game due to the trauma with the desert shootout, along with the Lalo confrontation, because not much time has passed since the end of season 5, with season 6 picking up, directly after. So Jimmy's just now starting to get back on his feet after this kind of week or two time skip, and learning about Lalo still being alive would no doubt just ruin his mentality again. So you could see this as Kim trying to protect Jimmy, but it's also selfish of Kim due to wanting Jimmy to be confident in order to continue the plan to take down Howard. Kim needs Jimmy to be in the right mindset so she doesn't tell him about Lalo in fear that, this would throw Jimmy off of his game again. She also might think that she can possibly handle it on her own. Ever since they got married, they agreed no more lies, when obviously that's not the case. Jimmy used to always hide the criminal side of his life from her, and now she's hiding it from him. And yeah, as you said, Gil, of course, Kim could eventually end up telling Jimmy, whether it's at the beginning of the next episode or down the line, kind of as you said, possibly when she needs to, due to maybe being confronted by Lalo, or just something to the point where she has to involve Jimmy now. But he's obviously gonna get pretty upset, but situation might be so dire that they'll have to just kind of shove that down and save that for later and deal with the situation. But now it's been another episode and Kim still hasn't told Jimmy. And the fact that Jimmy says, thank God he's dead, just emphasizes the false relief that Jimmy feels about it, something that Kim doesn't want to shatter. So, now it seems like Kim is trying to carry the burden herself of knowing that Lalo's still alive and could possibly come after them. But it's a bit irresponsible, because if it happens to Jimmy, like if Lalo confronts Jimmy out of nowhere, he won't see it coming and he won't be prepared ahead of time the way that Kim kind of is.
Yeah, it's the old finger guns switcheroo. How, Jimmy had the finger guns at the end of season 4. Kim had them at the end of season 5. he was keeping everything from her. Now she's keeping everything from him. It's a little bit on the nose whenever you think about it like that. But what you pointed out was definitely true. There's a switch in how they're doing that. And I just want to interrupt for a second to touch on James Egan, not to be confused with James Egan from the CEO of Lumen in the series Severance. Australian 799, thank you for that. He has the question, you think Mike has fully become the Mike from Breaking Bad? If not, what finally gets him there? This is a good question that I don't have an answer to. I don't think he is. I don't think he is. I think they made a step towards that in last season, whenever they had him sort of come to that conclusion that he's going to do what he's good at. He's going to deal he's going to he's going to play the hand that life has dealt him, kind of situation. But it doesn't really match up for me. What do you think about that, Gil?
It's hard. Yeah. I'm kind of in the same boat as you, where I don't necessarily think he has that far to go. But if you asked me to detail out what are the remaining steps, or how does this Mike differ significantly from the Mike we saw in Breaking Bad, it would be hard for me to point out a lot of specifics. I mean, clearly the Mike in Breaking Bad has more of an appetite for violence. He's not looking for it, but it doesn't make him as he's not as opposed to it as he is in Better Call Saul. I think if he met another Nacho, which I guess he kind of does in Jesse in Breaking Bad, I don't think he'll be as ready to take him on as a sort of pupil. And we see that with Jesse. I mean, at first, he kind of just thinks that we need to get him out of this whole situation because he's an unknown, he's erratic, he's causing problems. Eventually, he decides to take him on and start to mentor him. So yeah, I guess this is a lot of me saying I don't think he's quite there yet. What will get him there? I assume it's something involving Lalo. Though, last thing I'll just add is I think Nacho is a big part of that too. That was such a tragic situation, and I think that just shows it. That helps him recognize inevitable conclusions. He helped Nacho here and there, and ultimately, he, at least so far, was able to protect Nacho's father, but he couldn't help Nacho escape his ultimate fate. So in the future, I think that will make him a little more calculating over who can I truly save and who can't I save. So I think he took a step. I don't think he's quite there yet.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with what you're saying. In regards to comparing Nacho to Jesse, there's a scene in Breaking Bad, the famous scene of "I had a guy, now I don't. You're not the guy." Initially you think maybe he's talking to about Gus or something like that, or Gale. But I think there's a popular theory floating around that he was possibly talking about Nacho in that moment. Now, honestly, obviously when they made Breaking Bad, they didn't have Better Call Saul in mind, and Nacho and Lalo weren't characters yet, but they just do an amazing job at retconning situations to make sense for the flow of Breaking Bad. And something that this show does so brilliantly is just being able to work within the confines that they've already set for themselves. And in regards to when Mike will become, no half measure Mike, there isn't really an exact moment. It's kind of just his character arc throughout the entirety of Better Call Saul, because at first, he goes to great lengths to not kill anyone, even in the game with Tuco in season 2, and then by season 4, he's like, okay, well, I'll kill someone in the game, but innocent people that aren't in the game are off limits. And I think by the end of the show, he'll eventually kind of fall in line with the way he is in Breaking Bad, just kind of following what Gus wants him to do. So yeah, there isn't really any given moment of him becoming no half measure Mike, just kind of the same thing with the moment that Jimmy became Saul Goodman, or the moment that Walt became Heisenberg. It's a slow, gradual evolution or de-evolution. There's not one exact moment. There's a lot of different stepping stones.
Yeah, it happens in steps. And I think that they probably will give us an event, maybe something we haven't seen yet, to just make it all feel really connected with Breaking Bad. But they don't really need to either. We have another one here for from the Recovery 716. Thank you for the $4.99. He says, haha, I listened to all your channels from my Better Call Saul coverage. Glad you guys are collabing. Looking forward to that season 2 tier list, Kiwi. So thanks again for that.
Yeah, just I'm really excited to get that season 2 tier list out. I did like a season 1 tier list before season 6 started. Was gonna get season 2 out, got a bunch of copyright claims. I was talking to Pete about it, also my other YouTube buddy George Drake, and so I just have to go back in, re-edit a few things. Might have some time this week or next week to do it, and then during the mid-season break, I'm going to be doing the rest of the seasons, kind of leading up to the final half of season 6. But yeah, glad I'm here. Loving the stream so far. It's a lot of fun.
And we have one from Tanner R. Thank you for the $5. What BCS theory would anger you if it turned out to be true? Gil, you want to go first on this one?
Yeah. So I'll first give the caveat that whatever, if a theory turns out true, I sort of trust the writers to do it in a way that even if I didn't like it initially, I'd say, you know what, in retrospect, that makes sense. But the first one that came to mind is that Lalo and Kim will run off together. She'll leave Jimmy for Lalo. I can't picture it. I can't picture it.
That's such a meme.
Yeah. But yeah, maybe the runner. Actually, I won't say my runner up because I have a feeling one of you might say it, but that's probably the one that would anger me the most.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting. I just love that.
You know,
I think it's such a meme. I definitely get comments about it, but it's kind of the same thing as like, oh, Kim turns into Wendy from Breaking Bad, and now that we've seen Wendy and Kim together, it's not like she had an outer body experience or anything. That thankfully that meme is dead. But now I even have people messaging me being like, oh, well, maybe Wendy is Kim's mom. Is like, just never ends. It's like the Tobias thing from The Walking Dead. It just never Morales or whatever. It just never ends. To answer the question though, probably Howard dying. I've been predicting since last year when I did some season 6 death predictions that Howard will eventually become so depressed from what Jimmy and Kim are doing to him that he might end up killing himself. Now, there's the possibility where he might get involved with the cartel side of the show, and, we'll discuss that more in a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. Definitely Howard dying. I think it might happen, but I really hope it doesn't.
Yeah, I think that I would have to say the same thing that Gil said. Kim running away with Lalo, or just becoming the cartel lawyer, or I guess I could extend it to just being there behind the scenes. I really hate the idea that she exists in Breaking Bad the whole time, is actively a part of Saul's life, but we just never saw her. I feel like that feels like it undermines part of what already came before. Now they could, like you said, I'll add that caveat that you said, Gil, that I trust them to, if it does go that way, that it'll make sense for what they were trying to do. And there's a lot of variations on her being around, but not around, during the Breaking Bad timeline that could be really fantastic. But just her, and like him and her in that golden palace, like sitting around planning and laundering money, that would be a bummer for me. I really wouldn't enjoy that unless they really did a good job with it. Let's touch on these other ones and then we'll jump back in. Daniel Cortez, thank you for the $2. Do you think Howard will break up Jimmy and Kim? I would say no. What do you guys think? I mean, it's the situation with Howard may play a part in that, but I don't think he will personally do that, just based on what Kim, like kind of the conversation that they had at the end of season 5, where he tried to tell Kim what to think about what was going on in their relationship, and it ended very badly for him.
Well, I don't think Howard's going to go out of his way to, directly sabotage their marriage or their relationship. I think maybe, the result of them rooting Howard's career or his life might be too much for them to handle, and they might go their separate ways because of it. But if anything, they're going to be the ones breaking up Howard and his wife, honestly.
Yeah, I
Gil,
think
anything to add?
I agree with both you guys that I think if they do end up breaking up, it'll be in large part because of however the Howard situation resolves itself. One idea I've heard floated that I think is a possibility is if things start to go too far with Howard, will Jimmy try to sabotage Kim? She wants to move ahead with the plan. He doesn't. Could that create some tension between them? I think that's a possibility.
Okay, and Gil, this one here is actually a nice transition back to right where we were on in our discussion a second ago. So do you want to talk about this? You want to read this one, and we'll give our thoughts on this.
Sure. Well, thank you for the super chat. And he asks, can you please tell me why Gus planted the gun in the lab/laundromat instead of keeping it close? As a Chilean generalissimo, it doesn't make sense. Help. So I guess Chase or Pete, who wants to speculate on this?
I mean, I already kind of gave my prediction. I think that he kind of keeps it there in case he ends up confronting Lalo down there. I mean, I don't know why Lalo wouldn't bring a gun himself, but I mean, I feel like it's just some sort of method of self-defense, and you know, Gus could get another ankle gun for all we know. I mean, I feel like it's significant that it's that same gun that he had, on his person the whole time, but it's not out of the range of possibility that he could just get another gun to keep on himself as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty. It's so much of a Chekhov's gun kind of thing, like that. It makes you
Yeah.
question it. You're like, oh, maybe it's a red herring, you know.
Right.
I think why he put it there, yeah, it has to be part. I think it's more of a trap than just part of a plan. You know what I mean? Like that's what it felt like to me. The whole pacing out where it's at and knowing where exactly how to get to it. That felt like it was a part of a trap that he wants to set for Lalo. I don't know exactly how the mechanics of how that's going to play out, but it goes beyond just like it's not simple. Like there's importance to what's happening there. And when I was watching it, I thought maybe that this is, he has this realization that he can't kill him, so he could use that against him, and he could try to actually lure him there, in one way or the other. He's either gonna, obviously, we'll get to this, but obviously Lalo's going to track down who bought the slide rule, and he's going to be going in that direction. Gus doesn't know that necessarily, but he does know that he'll eventually come to those people who work there because they're the only people that know about it. And so I think that we'll see what I think it'll depend on what his plan is to actually get Lalo to the location. But I'm not really sure I understand the angle of it as a Chilean generalissimo. It doesn't make sense. Like I'm not really sure where they're coming from with that. You guys have anything on that?
No, I just agree. I think it's a trap of some kind. I floated a couple theories earlier about how that trap might work. I doubt I'm correct in my theory, but one way or another, I don't think it's as simple as I might need a gun later. Let me hide it here. I think it's a little more clever than that.
Yeah.
I just generally agree with you saying it's a Chekhov's gun. I mean, first we saw it on his ankle. I think there's two separate moments. First in the last episode and this episode where we see him looking at it, and now we have this whole scene of him placing it there. Again, I don't know why he did the pacing. He kind of deliberately counted his steps before he placed it. I don't know. That's gonna play into it, but they're definitely setting it up where this is gonna play some sort of significant part in the story.
Let me add one more thing to my theory. Why did he check the power cable? Why is he checking the steps? He wants to make sure Lalo ends up standing in a very specific spot, and then he's going to use the power cable to electrocute him. He has to die in a really interesting way. Gus got half his face blown off. Lalo's going to be in an electrified corpse.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
If that happens, you said it here first, man.
Yeah, now we're getting into wild speculation. Well, that could be. Yeah, I would agree that they do need to give Lalo a memorable ending, and I guess we need to go back to something completely disconnected from that and talk about Viola.
Yes. Yeah, Kim meets with Viola, her old paralegal when she was working for Schweikart and Coakley. And she set it up as this is just a meeting for us to catch up, old friends, but really she's there to suss out some information. She wants to find out who is going to be the mediator, which is basically somebody that's going to oversee a meeting between Sandpiper and the lawyers and their clients to come to some kind of out of court settlement, usually. So she wants to know who the mediator is going to be, and she gets the name. It's an ex-judge, Rand Casimiro. So she brings that information to Jimmy. They look at a picture of the ex-judge, and Jimmy comments, "Love the stash. That's a lot less face to worry about." And Kim says, unless he shaves. And that seems to be another step in their plan. So any thoughts on the meeting with Viola? Any thoughts on what this means for next steps in Operation Howard?
You can go first, Chase.
Yeah, sure. So at first, they showed this in the trailers, and at first I figured that Kim was gonna talk to her former assistant because she wanted to hire her as her own personal assistant. I figured we'd see both Jimmy and Kim hire an assistant this episode, Jimmy with Francesca, Kim with Viola. And in a way, that still could happen in the future if or when Kim does get to set up that pro bono practice with the multiple lawyers. That's what she was talking about with Cliff, and it's really what she wants to do with the Sandpiper money when they get it. But then I realized that what you were saying, Gil. Kim is probably just catching up with Viola in order to get close to her again, due to her mentioning that she's working on the Sandpiper case now. I assume that Kim probably already knew that, which is why she wanted to meet up with Viola in the first place, but she still just asked leading questions in order for it to come out in conversation naturally, as to not raise suspicion of her intentions. But, just the way that Viola is talking up Kim, I wonder if Kim will screw over Viola or throw her under the bus in some way while potentially using her against the Sandpiper case, to her benefit, which would really hurt, just considering how much Viola is praising Kim and saying how much she looks up to her.
Yeah, that felt like it was the setup to me, was that here is someone who knows Kim professionally and personally on a certain level, and she just, she's in awe of her. She's an inspiration for this person who she's there to deceive. You know what I mean? It's all under false pretenses, and yes, she is doing all those things that Viola thinks she's great for, but she's also working behind the scenes to bring somebody down, get this whole thing moving, and she's involving this person at, in that scheming. And what I think about, like, one of the things you mentioned Lyle earlier, Chase, and this is another one of those examples of these great side characters that they're almost invisible until they get their chance to come up, and then you're like, oh, that's right, this character is great, like, this is such a
Yes.
great character. They just, like, come out of the shadows, and I really thought this was a fantastic example of that. And I would say that her and, like, Aaron and especially Ed Begley Jr.'s stuff in this episode. There was so much little stuff like that I really appreciated, how these characters, like, just added those little flourishes and the little bit of screen time that they had.
That's the thing. You see these side characters here and there, and you don't really think much of them, but then they really utilize them to their fullest potential. I mean, how many Ernie fans do we have from the earlier seasons, right? Like, never would have thought, but yeah, they're just so memorable, and I really appreciate them. Like, I love Bill Oakley, like, number one Bill Oakley fan here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they do a really good job of making the background characters feel like real people. And mentioning Bill, I love that they gave him a little bit more to do. Usually he's just a downtrodden lawyer that's opposite Jimmy. But last episode, he got to tell Jimmy why everyone sees him as a pariah.
Double fisting those bags of chips.
Hmm.
I always think that, like, I always loved how Jimmy comes to him with food, because he has just the worst diet of just being so busy that he eats out of the vending machine all the time.
Well, Jimmy really knows how to talk to the courthouse people. Like, he brings Bill Oakley some snacks. He brings the receptionist, a little TY beanie. He really has gotten all of these people on his side, which makes it such a big deal that possibly Suzanne Erickson has turned them all against him.
Yeah. And we'll have to let's look at these super chats really quickly before we get back around to finishing up with Kim. Big Ralph, thank you for the $10. The pacing for this is going to go down in the dark. Gus will pull the plug, walk to the gun in the dark. I need to be on this show to help you guys. Yeah, I mean that's a popular thing that I saw. Like I said, I think that he wants to know where it is, like, so he can find it, and that would definitely make you think that it might be in the dark. You guys have anything that you want to add to this?
I think that's a possibility. I think it's a good theory. It makes sense why he was fidgeting with the lights. That has to come into play somehow.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
he can find that spot, and then he knows it's X amount of steps over to where it's at, and I don't know why you need to know the number of steps if it's not in the dark. The part that I'm having more of a confusion on is how is he planning on getting Lalo there to where, and how do you shoot somebody in the dark? I mean, I get the idea of getting a gun, but like you can't see the person you're trying to shoot. You know what I mean? Is he going to walk over there with him as he's pacing that out, or I think there's some unknowns still involved? But I do understand, Big Ralph. Thanks again for that. I mean, I do understand what you're saying and the inclination, and I guess maybe that's really where I get a little bit confused is how this all comes to be important, like how he ends up having to employ that special skill.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, there is that part of the conversation where Mike talked to Gus, and they pointed at kind of that hole in the wall and said, it's filled up with dirt, no one's gonna get through. But they are kind of implying that Gus suspects that Lalo will somehow make his way down there.
And when the lights turn off, you notice that they kind of shut off and there was still some light and then the rest of it turned off. Maybe Lalo ends up in the spotlight. He gets shot, but who knows you shot him because everyone's in the dark.
Yeah, it's possible. Connor O'Keefe, thank you for the 199. How are you going to shoot and kill someone you can't see? Yeah, he's got that same question that I have, and I think we addressed it. Do we need to add anything else to that?
Honestly, I've said about all.
Yeah, any more about Viola?
Nothing from me.
All right, so then Chase, you can take us through Howard.
Yeah,
I do
sure.
want to
My
add,
question.
actually, not on Viola, but just one more thing on the Rand Casimiro thing,
Yeah.
because what exactly are they planning to do with that mediator? And I just found it odd that they seemed so fixated on his appearance, and especially the way that Jimmy said, "I love the stash. That's less face to worry about." And maybe I'm just thinking about it because we've seen so many body doubles. I don't think we're getting a Rand Casimiro body double. But in a sense, maybe they do want somebody to be mistaken for that character. And again, if I'm doing crazy theories, we've seen Jimmy take Chuck down by getting him to accuse Jimmy of a bunch of things and sort of make himself look very paranoid. And it didn't work out too well. Howard almost falls into that trap here because when Cliff comes up to him and tells him everything he's seen, Howard sort of stops himself from going on a tirade about Jimmy. All he says is, "I have a Jimmy McGill problem," and he walks away to take care of it. But what if at some point they want Howard to see what he believes is Rand Casimiro? So when we finally get to the point where Howard is making public accusations about Jimmy setting him up, what if included in that list of accusations is, "I saw Rand Casimiro working with them behind the scenes," or "I saw him doing something he shouldn't have been doing." And that's part of how they ultimately take him down. But that's something that occurred to me earlier today.
Yeah, that's real
Yeah,
interesting. I got no clue what that's gonna come down to, but yeah, that's a good theory.
yeah, and we can talk about a little bit more about that when we talk about them together in Jimmy's part of the story too. So
Right, right.
I'll circle back around to that because I think everything you're saying is on the money. I think that's going to be a big part of the next steps. And yeah, let's circle back around to that in a minute, as we do have a few super chats here. Amber T, nice to see you with the 420. Thank you for
Let's
that.
go.
If Lalo finds Kai, what info will Kai give up? And I think, I kind of touched on this in my video. The we don't really nobody really knows much about this by design, but he can tell him details on what, like we were building this big thing. We had to, prop it up from below. There's technical details he knows, but they don't know anything about like where it's at, where what they're actually going to do in there later. So yeah, this is a good question. Do you guys have anything that you see that he might be able to give him?
Yeah. Well, first off, when you have a gun to your head or something like that, you'd be willing to say almost anything, and especially since Kai never really liked Mike or Gus, and he was always kind of the outgoing backlash type of guy. I feel like he'd be willing to give up information, with just kind of, threatening, and maybe he doesn't even need a gun to his head. So, yeah, we'll probably talk more about that when we get around to discussing the Lalo side of the episode, but I definitely see a Lalo and Kai scene in the future.
Yeah. Gil?
Honestly, nothing to add. I mean, I think they have Kai and maybe some of the others have every reason to talk. I don't think they're happy about the way things went down. But even if
Yeah.
they did talk, I can't really think of what specific piece of information they could give Lalo. They could definitely give him more info, and maybe he can use that in combination with something else to find the proof he's looking for. But I really don't know.
Yep. And we have another one here from Latasha. $10. Thank you for that. Kim is the first person that Saul disappeared, probably risking her life and breaking protocol, calling him once a year. Somehow they'll end up back together in the end as their new identity. So, not really a question, but a statement. Is this one that you agree with, Gil?
I think it's a possibility. I think in my predictions video, I may have even said something very similar to this, but like I said earlier, my thought on where Kim ends up changes minute to minute. I do think that the disappearer will come up in some way this final season. I know, sadly, the character himself, due to Robert Forster's passing, likely can't appear. I don't see them using any kind of trickery to have the character actually on screen. But it would almost seem odd to me that with so many characters likely ending up in the crosshairs or in mortal danger and needing to run, it would almost seem weird to me if it doesn't come up. But it would also seem like a little bit played out. How many times have we seen a character use that plot device? I mean, that was Jesse's ultimate conclusion. So it feels equally odd to me that this is the way Kim would go, but it's also a
Real,
possibility. So
real quick, Chase, I just wanted to, I don't know if we made this clear beforehand, but we don't really talk about the teasers here or
Right.
things from the future. So just because I know Gil doesn't watch them, so we do that.
Okay. Yeah, I was
I don't.
literally just about to ask that before I
Yes.
answered, so I'll kind of keep
Yeah.
it
So
teaser free here.
yeah, that's why I interjected here because I do agree with what you're saying on both levels, Gil. But and that is really my aversion to this is that they've used it a number of times already, but somehow it has to come back into the story. So okay, sorry. Go ahead, Chase. You can you can talk about this super chat now.
No, it's all good. So yeah, kind of spoiler free here. We all kind of, thought that Nacho would be the first one to be disappeared, but clearly that didn't happen. So yeah, I do think that maybe Kim will be the first one to get disappeared. Kind of the meme theories, like Wendy is Kim. Another meme theory is that Ed is actually her father. I don't really think that's the case, but something that's been floating around. And it's just the thing with overusing the disappear. I mean, they used it for Walt, they used it for Jesse multiple times, or I guess he didn't go the first time, but he ended up, in El Camino, and then obviously Saul is Gene. So it's just a certain point of overusing that and utilizing it correctly. And I was thinking about it recently. Like, are we even gonna get an explanation for how Saul gets the connection? And since we know that Mike doesn't know about Ed, how does he get it? I don't know. I just hope we get some sort of satisfying conclusion, and they can use Ed. Sadly Robert Forster passed away, rest in peace, but they still can use elements of the vacuum cleaner guy without actually showing his face. Just show the red van pull up, maybe show someone going inside of the building. So there are workarounds.
Yeah, and that's one of the pluses actually, if you think about it, of them using him so much is those little cues that would really actually pull on some heartstrings because you'd be thinking about the character who is so essential to this thing and how the actor has passed away. And yeah, that's an interesting angle there. Amber T again, thank you for the 420. She says if Howard survives, and it looks like she hopes that he will his marriage? What do you think, guys? I mean, I think that that's a possibility since that's really the only thing we know about his personal life is that he plays golf and he has a wife. That he could maybe he'll lose a hand and he can't play golf anymore. But I mean, I think that there's a possibility that his marriage might have have some issues. What do you guys think?
And they could go for the ultimate tragedy if you kind of flip your question. So Howard doesn't survive, but his marriage does. Maybe we get a
Mm.
scene of him with his therapist and he says, things are great at home. Everything's working out. We've resolved all our issues. And that's just in time for his character to die. And then it will be horrible.
Oh
Not a
no.
prediction, but
I totally thought you were gonna go in a different way of his wife keeping him around after he was dead.
I like to say, I think I'm getting exposed to like a dark part of your mind that I haven't seen before. I'm intrigued.
Oh yeah,
Hey,
no, um well, I don't know. I mean, I did a whole video about Howard's family and learning about Cheryl, his wife, and the mystery of his father. And I do think that that part of dialogue is kind of a Chekhov's gun in its own. And I'd like to relate it back to Rebecca with Chuck back in what was it, season 2 and then season 3. We only kind of saw hints of Rebecca, like her name on the piano sheet music before we finally got introduced to her. So it could be the same thing here where we hear about Cheryl and then, when tragedy strikes, possibly with their marriage, maybe we actually see her, but it could also just, show that it's possible for characters to live in this universe without actually seeing them on screen.
yep, and we got a one here for in another direction from the Recovery 716. Thank you for the 9.99. Do you guys think that the flash forward call in Quite a Ride for Francesca could be Oakley? And I'll just say right now that that is not something that I had ever thought of before. And he says that he thinks that Jimmy rats on Lalo and gets back in Oakley's good graces. In Breaking Bad, maybe that's why he blames Nacho. What do you think? Chase, why don't you go first?
Oh man, well that is just a loaded question. I mean, I don't even remember how long the video I did on that was about a year ago. It was like maybe like 20-40 minutes going through all the different possibilities and the exact wording that they used in that scene. But long story short, I think it's going to be Howard or Kim because the date that he tells Francesca to take this phone call is on his birthday, Jimmy's birthday. So, and it says refer to, tell him Jimmy sent you, not tell him Saul sent you. So it's probably going to be someone from the Better Call Saul timeline. I mean, it could be Bill Oakley. We know that, we saw him in American Greed. So, we know he makes it out of this one. But yeah, I don't know. I'd probably, put my money on Howard or Kim. But that's an interesting theory for sure.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the way that this is worded now, and I thought I think that Kim is the person that's going to call that Francesca is going to answer for. Maybe this commenter is asking about who he gives the card to as far as giving that to Francesca, right? Where he says, "Tell him Jimmy, tell him Jimmy sent you or whatever." Um, that's what I would think that maybe he told her Oakley as a lawyer. I don't think that he would be on the phone calling him on his birthday. Gil, do you have anything to add to that?
No, Pete, I agree with your take. The one thing I would add, not about Bill Oakley, but just I think Jimmy rats on Lalo. I have thought that something in the realm of Jimmy ratting on Lalo is possible and could lead to the infamous Jimmy thinking that Lalo was sent somebody after him and him shifting the blame to Nacho. So I think it's a possibility.
Yeah, I'm not really. I've seen a lot of that in my comments. People talking about him ratting, and I just don't think unless Kim changes her position on it, we'll see Jimmy do that, because Jimmy didn't even really have a strong feeling one way or the other. He just went straight to asking Kim what he thought she should do. And I thought that was a really weird character moment where he just sort of abandoned, his decision making in that process. But it just kind of goes to show you that everything he's doing right now, he's not really doing because he wants to do it. He's doing it because he's trying to keep his partner happy. Jacob Zabel, thank you for the $4.99. Do you think Kim could be pulling the strings from jail in Breaking Bad? I don't know about that. I mean, I think she could be in jail. We touched on that earlier. I don't know what strings she would be pulling. There's one thing, and we're gonna. I don't really want to derail too much, but we're kind of already there. So let's just run with it a little bit here. There was a thing that struck me, or it has been kind of creeping up in the back of my thoughts in the last few episodes, and it ties back to that opening teaser of the just the opulence and over the top thing that Saul Goodman has going on at home. And I was thinking about, like, how this thing is just sort of could get out of control with Howard, that they're trying to just bring him down a notch, but maybe it's going to, it's going to escalate in a way that they have to keep up their, like they find themselves in a situation where they have to keep up the appearances, you know, like Jimmy's not living in that house because he's trying to impress potential clients and drug dealers, but because he's trying to keep up the story that they have to invent in order for whatever's happening at the end of this to make sense. I don't know. Do you understand what I'm conveying there? Like that's it's a symbol of everything just getting out of control and them having to stick to it because it's necessary for whatever the scam is that they're running.
Is this coming to sort of agreeing with the thought I was having in some of our earlier conversations, that the opulence of the house doesn't necessarily mean Kim isn't there, that it could be more of the how do we create the image of Saul Goodman, like the flashy car, we also need the flashy house. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, I mean, it kind of depends on whether the story is that she has to get out of town. I don't think she's there.
Right,
Like
right.
I don't think she's there, but either she's going to have to get out of town or she's going to be removed from town. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? So in a scenario where she has to go on the run, then maybe that there's just some weird thing that they were trying to do that he just has to be a complete sleaze, to keep up
Mhm.
appearances. But then, he's still Jimmy, so he can't. It's like the switch in episode or season 2. He can't help himself. He has to flip the switch.
Mhm.
If he's going to be a sleaze, he has to get out there and he has to, launder some money or what have you. And then he ends up, kind of creating Walter White or making Walter White possible. And then if you look back, one more step, then her creating Saul Goodman,
Mhm.
one step removed, also kind of made
Right.
Walter White possible.
That does sit right with me more than the idea of her being there actively in Breaking Bad and pulling strings. More like she helped to craft the character of Saul Goodman, got the ball rolling, and Jimmy carried it forward. That kind of makes more sense to me.
Mm.
I mean, like, kind of in regards to what you were saying, Pete, about, maybe Kim's gonna take this too far. I mean, maybe she feels like she already has, and so she can't stop now, even though she totally could. But and it's kind of a parallel that I found between Kim and Walter, because in the last episode, in episode 4, Cliff gave her an out and a way to get that pro bono office that she wants the Sandpiper money for. So, in a way, even though she might still have to try and fund it herself, she said he won't write her a check, but she has a way to do what she wants legitimately. And it's the same thing in Breaking Bad season 1 with Elliot and Gretchen giving Walton out a way to, they'll pay for his cancer treatments, they'll give him a legit job, but he chooses to go, down a dark path. And I think Kim is just in the same boat.
Yeah. And Amber T again, 420. Why do you all think toilets are doing so much this season? I wondered the same thing. I did listen to the Insider podcast, and Vince Gilligan said that this was his idea, and he gives a story of where it came from. That's a little explicit, I guess. He went to look at a place with someone, and there was a toilet that had been disconnected there that someone had used as if it was connected, and so that made an impression on him, and he wanted to have a disconnected and a toilet involved in the scene for some reason when he was writing it. Do you guys have any toilet related information to add to that?
I would just add that I think it's not just this season. I think it's almost been a recurring motif in the show, going all the way back to season one, where when Jimmy's finally having some success, one of the first potential clients he meets with is the guy that wanted to file a patent on his talking toilet. And then
Chandler.
Chandler, that's right. And then earlier this season, well, I guess this is part of what you're mentioning, but earlier this season, he clogs the toilet. I feel like it's funny, and it's kind of just Jimmy's lot in life, that he's always down in the dirt, down in the mud, and dealing with disgusting things like toilets.
Toilet humor is a term, right? I mean, that's a thing, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think
So
it's very
probably a
appropriate for
nod to
Jimmy.
that as well. Yeah. Jeffrey Townsend, thank you for the 10 Canadian dollars. I think that's what that is. Speaking of boxing, Berna Ziegler was punching above his weight, marrying that babe. If Lalo doesn't kill Kai, Mike will. Kai definitely spills the beans to Lalo. Yeah, and we talked about that. We don't really know what he can tell him, but he can give him more information. And I think both Gil and Chase touched on that idea that he's more inclined because of what happened with Mike, and that makes sense. And yes, Frau Ziegler was a very pleasant looking woman, and you kind of got it. You kind of had the idea of why, like, it was kind of a weird character tick of Werner's that he was so connected, like, like he went to such great lengths to try to reconnect with his wife, and I feel like that kind of validates some of that there. Do you have anything that you want to add, Gil?
I just love how quickly they can develop a character with so little screen time. And the introduction for her is just this interesting thing that you can't not notice, where she's
Mm.
listening to the trivia behind her and kind of mouthing the answers to herself. So it just, it's like what we were saying earlier. She's more than a background character, but she's definitely a character with not a lot of screen time. And they find a way to very quickly make her feel human and make it feel like there's more to her than just, oh, that's Werner's wife. This is a fully developed, real human being that is about to be in Lalo's crosshairs.
Yeah, and I liked how that sort of they sort of mirrored, like, how whenever Werner was in the bar, he was he's listening to other people talking, with the way he pronounced the wheat beer or whatever,
Hefeweizen.
So, Hefeweizen, yeah. So it was yeah, I thought that was a nice touch that they had similarities. You could see why he was drawn to her, and it also made it, we'll talk about this in a minute. It also made it make a lot more sense that Lalo was able to apply his charms, because why wouldn't he? You know what I mean? Like it wasn't out of place if he was just walking up to some random person and, trying to talk her up. Mr. QWERTY, thank you for the $4.99. What do you think about Jeff the cab driver? Is he just some guy, or does he have connections to the underworld? Love all your guys' videos. I think he's just some guy. I think he knows who Saul is from his time in Albuquerque, and he wants to leverage that to his advantage in some way. But I don't think he has connections to the underworld. I didn't get that feeling. What about you, Chase? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Gene versus the cab driver is just another loaded question that I just love thinking about, because there's so many variables. Is he just some guy, like you said? And I do agree, regardless of who he is, that he wants to leverage this info on Jimmy or Gene. And yeah, I mean, like, is he involved with the criminal underworld? Is he a gangster of sorts? Is he an undercover policeman? I don't think he's that. I think he really is a guy that just moved from Albuquerque. yeah, I'm really interested in seeing how it's going to turn out, and he definitely has some malicious intent, like 100%. I mean, Gene is paranoid and all that, and it is a question of, is Gene's paranoia going to be his downfall? But Gene was paranoid about Jeff in season 4, and in season 5, his paranoia was validated almost. It's kind of the same thing with the recent episodes with Kim wondering if she's being followed, and she's paranoid, and that's validated. And then Gus is paranoid about Lalo, and we the audience know that Lalo's alive, so that's validated too. So just because you're paranoid doesn't mean someone's not following you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's, you're right on the money with the he has malicious intent. He's not a good guy. But beyond that, it's hard to say. There's a pretty wide range of different things or different boxes that he could fit into.
He came off
And
as so sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I was
You're
going to
cool.
say, to me, he came off as almost a criminal wannabe. Like he saw Saul Goodman as his in because he knows Saul's in that world. And now he has this kind of connection because he knows his secret that nobody else knows. So it almost seemed like to me like he was excited about that maybe this is his way into the underworld.
Yeah, that's a good point too. He does have that sort of around the fringes, but not really hardcore. That's a good. I'm with you on that. JP, thank you for the 199. He wants opinions on the boxing scene, also all the Germany stuff. And as soon as we get through these other super chats here, we are going to be getting on the boxing scene. And the last thing we're going to talk about is the Germany stuff. So thank you for the 199. But can we I'll ask that you wait just for a minute so we can talk about them in the natural order that they happen. Because if not, we're just going to have to do it again.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I was about to say the same thing, honestly, for sure.
Norwood Wildlife, $10. Thank you for that. Will Saul get killed at the Cinnabon? My initial gut reaction is no. How about you? What do you think, Gil?
I think Saul's already been killed at the Cinnabon. He's Gene Takovic now. His soul has been killed.
Yeah.
Will there be a Saul Goodman corpse created at the Cinnabon? My gut also says no. If he dies, I don't think that's where it happens.
Yeah. If he dies, it'll be somewhere more private. I don't know, some sort of confrontation with Jeff in a back alley or a parking lot or something. But yeah, I don't really think that it's going to be this sort of public shooting type of situation. But definitely is dead inside. I do agree with that point.
Yeah, I think that, if you think about he does have the metaphorical death there. And I think that if you think about the poster for this season, which is kind of hidden in the background here, I think he's going to be reborn there as Saul, not die there. I mean, it may lead to his death.
Yeah.
It may lead to his death, but I don't think that I don't think Cinnabon is the important part of that equation. One more, or no, we got a couple more. Sorry. Stu Sasser, $2. Thank you very much. Nacho's shiny gun was seen before in Breaking Bad. I don't know. I mean, there's shiny guns everywhere. Do you guys know what this is referring to?
Not ringing a bell in particular. No, I'll try and watch over the chat to see if someone gives a specific example. But I mean, who knows, honestly.
I tried searching Nacho's gun Breaking Bad in Google, and nothing jumped out at me. So that's all I've got.
All right. So yeah, we'll keep an eye out on that if it pops up in the chat. Whisper Gaming, $9.99. Thank you very much for that. In season 1, the opening song is Address Unknown. Maybe Kim escaped to her hometown in Nebraska and made a deal to meet Jimmy there, but he never found her. The idea of her going back to her hometown, it just seems like it's hard to imagine her where she's at right at this moment. just like going back home with her tail between her legs. I mean, she's got a lot of other options, and she doesn't seem to be very happy, or she wasn't happy. She actually left her home because she didn't like it there. But this is an interesting take, that maybe that she didn't just know that she's there, but they just haven't run into each other. Chase, what do you have on this particular comment?
Well, a few things. First off, I love just kind of highlighting the Undress Unknown. As I said earlier, I really love the Breaking Bad music. I love the ink spots. I feel like Better Call Saul has introduced me to a lot of really good 50s and 60s music I would have never heard of. Same with, not to derail too much, but the Fallout games, it's where I first heard the ink spots. And this super chat, that's a good interpretation. There's obviously a lot of different ways you can interpret it. My original interpretation is just that Saul just up and disappeared one day. So, I really feel like it's about him disappearing, and, kind of with the whole My Echo, My Shadow, and Me, which is, one of the other songs that's used during the Gene scenes. It's just really about his new life as Gene, and how he just kind of up and vanished. And who knows, maybe like if Kim is still alive, and she hadn't already been disappeared, then maybe she doesn't even know where Saul is as Gene. Maybe she thinks that Saul is just MIA. Maybe he got killed somehow. I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah, there's so many possibilities. Gil?
When I think about that phone call we discussed earlier, where we're expecting somebody to call on Jimmy McGill's birthday, and that quite a ride flash forward, and a lot of us think that could be Kim. I imagine that is to tell Kim what happened, that Jimmy is disappearing. I don't know at that point if he would know where he's going, but it might be the trigger for her to try and find him at some point. And if you ignore where all the chess pieces are right now and don't even think about how we get from point A to point B, but you just take it at face value that we have these, it's almost a love story. You have Jimmy and Kim. We know that Jimmy disappears into this sad life. We don't know what happens to Kim. Your instinct is to say there's going to be some kind of reunion. If this were a romantic comedy, or if it's a tragedy, there's an attempted reunion, there's a near miss, and they don't find each other. It feels predictable, but this show is unpredictable in the sense that sometimes they do go the predictable route. If you go back to Breaking Bad, Walt essentially sacrificed himself in an effort to save Jesse, and it worked. And then Jesse escaped. That feels like a sort of predictable ending. So you can't always go the unexpected way. All that to say, I think it's possible. I think it'd be really compelling to see what does it look like for Jimmy and Kim to meet after they've suffered a lot of consequences for their actions and have to reconcile with how they got here. I think that'd be compelling.
Real quick, I do want to elaborate on the whole Gene and Kim reunion theory. The thing is, right? Gene is in Omaha, Nebraska, and Kim's hometown is on the Nebraska-Kansas border. But the whole thing, so it's like, did he intentionally go there because he knew he'd be close to Kim? But when you're watching the original episode where Saul is with Ed, and he's getting his fake ID photo taken and all of that, it seems like Ed is the one that chooses the Omaha, Nebraska location, because he says, you're going to be in Omaha, Nebraska, and then Saul says, oh, what's there? So it's, if Saul was the one that chose the location, because some people can, like Jesse was able to choose to go to Alaska, but at least how the Breaking Bad dialogue was, and again, they could retcon it because they obviously they weren't thinking about this back when they made Breaking Bad, but yeah, just key moments on that dialogue there. I think Ed did choose that location, so who knows if that was intentional or not, and if they will reunite because of it.
Yeah, that would feel dishonest to me if they retconned that, honestly, because it's not a question. I mean, it's a throwaway line that they build Gene off of the throwaway line that he tells Walter in the basement, but it's not up really to debate of whether he chose to go there or not based on how it played out in Breaking Bad. Ed sends him there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah, I'm agreeing with what you said, but I'm just being a little more firm about like I think the retcon would be a bad idea because
Yeah, for
it's just
sure. That's the thing that just kind of kills it for me. That Jimmy went there intentionally. Is that it really does seem like Ed chose the location. So who knows?
Sir Chingaton. I did a pretty bad job with that, but Sir Torchington. Now we got it. $4.99. Thank you for that. Maybe think about putting spaces in between the words in your name if you want me to say that a little bit better. Two quick ideas. Gus won't be the one to pull the trigger on Lalo, and Jimmy will be the one to leave Kim. Thoughts? Yeah, there's a tendency to think that Jimmy will leave Kim in some kind of selfless manner to be heroic or whatever. I definitely that I feel like that there's a natural satisfaction that would come along with that. And Gus not being the one to pull the trigger on Lalo, I think that I saw a lot of comments in my last video of people thinking it's going to be Mike. Don't really know how either one of them is that much better, because I didn't really think it through. But I mean, generally Gus doesn't pull the trigger. I mean, somebody else does. So I think there would be a little bit of impact there if he was kind of like the box cutter scene, to see him actually get his hands dirty. But it could go a different way. Let's hear what you guys have to think. Go ahead, Gil. You can go first.
Yeah, I don't think I have too much to add on the Gus side, other than I think we're all expecting it to be something more clever than Gus picks up a
Yeah.
gun and shoots Lalo. So even if he is the one to pull the trigger, I feel like it's not going to be that simple. On Jimmy will be the one to leave Kim. I do think it would be more interesting for one of them to make a choice to leave the other than for them to be forced apart by one of them dying or by circumstance forcing them apart. I think to me that would be, at least as it stands right now, that feels more interesting to me. But the same caveat I came before, if it goes a different way, the writers usually find a way to make that feel organic and feel surprising and thought provoking.
Yeah. So first off, kind of an elaboration on what Pete was saying. He mentioned the box cutter scene, and that just kind of sparked an idea in my head. I was thinking about a week ago. I don't think we've ever seen Gus pull the trigger of a gun. I mean, we've seen him kill people, but he always does it with his hands, right? Like the box cutter scene, and then with Arturo in season 4 in front of Nacho. He has killed people, but it's always in some sort of gruesome, devastating way meant for intimidation. If Gus wants someone dead, that's what he has Mike for, right? So I don't know if this will be the first time we've ever seen Gus pull a trigger, but yeah, I believe we haven't actually ever seen that on screen. And then for Jimmy being the one to leave Kim, I actually did a recent theory video that Kim might screw over Jimmy and betray him. And just long story short, throughout seasons 1 to 4, or even 1 to 5, we thought that Kim would leave Jimmy because she's had enough with his schemes and his cons. Then going into season 6, we're thinking, oh, Jimmy will leave Kim because she's out of control now, is slipping Kimmy. But it's possible that Kim could get the Sandpiper money and just run and just betray Jimmy. And maybe that's why he's so cold-hearted and Breaking Bad, and making comments on Francesca and stuff like that. I mean, it's definitely just one of those many possibilities about Kim.
Yeah, I've said it on the stream and multiple times that one of the things that's so great about this final season is that everything is still on the table. They really haven't. They might have written themselves into corners in certain ways, but they haven't really made it. They haven't really narrowed down the different options as far as what's viable or not. The recovery 716. Thank you for the $4.99 again. He'd love to hear Kim say, "I need a dust filter for a Hoover Max Extract Pressure Pro Model 60. Can you help me with that?" Yeah, and like I said, the only problem I have with her disappearing is just that they've used it for several characters. And I think we kind of touched on it. Do you guys have anything else to add on that?
Just that I initially misread this question, and I saw "Can you help me with that?" as being outside of the quotes, like he wanted us to help with hearing Kim say that, and I was just gonna say I don't think I can do a great Kim impression, but,
I'm
I
not
can work on it for
best with
next week.
voices.
And I definitely don't know any disappearers in real life, so I can't give you their number either.
The only thing is that if she does say it, it might be in her own original way, right? Like Saul says it properly. Jesse just kind of blurts it out. He doesn't remember the exact phrase. So if Kim does say it, maybe she'll say it in her own way.
Mm-hmm. Tanner R., thank you for the $5 again. Howard's license plate showed the year is 2005. Breaking Bad starts 2008. What do you think will happen in those 3 years and Walt and Jesse appear in the midseason finale? Question mark. His it says 2005, but that is usually whenever the sticker expires. So the timeline is 2004 right now, as far as I
Hmm.
know. Um,
Yeah. There was a scene in 602 where we saw a close up of Betsy Kettleman's paperwork, and it said like May 4th, 2004, something like that. And then they did the Howard scheme with Wendy on the 18th. So it's about the middle of May right now for them in 2004, I believe.
yeah. And so that, the idea that Breaking Bad starts in 2008 is definitely correct. What happens in those 3 years? I mean, I don't know. It could just be that whatever happens in 2004 is so monumental that we'll just know that what happens in 2008 makes sense based on where we left the characters the last time we saw them. I mean, I do think we'll see a little bit of overlap. We definitely know that Walt and Jesse are appearing in the midseason finale. I'm not really sure on that. I don't really. I mean, something has to happen there, but we have a lot of things that are going on right now. So I don't know. What do you got, Gil? What do you think?
Um, so I've often thinking about how this show is going to bridge with Breaking Bad. I've always assumed that at some point we're going to hit. Okay, we've established the status quo of Saul Goodman's life, and not that nothing interesting happens, but the next monumental thing that happens is he gets involved with Walter White. So I think like it's kind of what you were alluding to, that something happens in 2004 that's so major it makes 2008 make sense. I think that's probably going to happen. And so when Walter and Jesse show up, I don't know that it'll be a flash forward, but I wonder if it will be we get to that status quo and then we somehow skip ahead, either a time jump or we go back to a montage where we see Saul Goodman at work and we kind of lead into the Breaking Bad timeline, and then once we get to that overlap period where maybe we're seeing some of Breaking Bad from another perspective, maybe that's where they show up. And my gut would tell me that's somewhere in the second half of the season. I am, just as a PSA in the chat, I'm seeing people mention credits. Maybe they have leaked just by looking at the credits what episode they're in. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I immediately glanced away to try not to see that. But those are my thoughts on it at the moment.
Yeah, so just to elaborate on that very last thing you said, Gil, I won't answer that for you, but I have had people message me about that, and so yeah, I have a pretty good idea on what episode they're gonna show up in, and kind of wish I didn't. I'm jealous of your bliss.
Good morning, Moto vlog, $5. Man, that was 2 in a row that I couldn't read. I was just actually distracted by the fact that we hit 1K as far as people here. That's the first for this, so that's pretty cool to see. I think Nacho's dad will get unlived by Lalo. Mike could not protect Papa. What about protecting Gus? Also, more payback for Hector. Your thoughts? Um, I just don't. We went into this pretty deeply in the episode 3 stream, and my biggest thing is I don't know to what end. Jim made a good point that it would just be awful, and that sometimes this show has a history of making things awful. I just, it doesn't make it it doesn't serve any purpose as far as like making the Salamancas more menacing, or wanting to see them taken out in Breaking Bad. I mean, Breaking Bad does a good job of that all on its own. So they're kind of superfluous in a way, I think, to what's important about the ending of, like, as far as Better Call Saul sticking the landing. I see a lot of times, like, even we talked about this a little bit last week, where people are like, "Well, I'm tired of the Kim and Jimmy storyline. They really need to get into the main story." And Kim and Jimmy are the main story here.
Preach.
Yeah, the other stuff is not. It it's connected. It's in the same universe, but it's not the main story. So unless it serves what's going on, and Mike to a lesser extent. I mean, Mike is a big part. Like, what happens with Mike is a big part of breaking Better Call Saul, and that brings in that whole side of things. But unless it's for the purpose of serving what's going on with Kim and Jimmy, and largely Jimmy becoming the Saul Goodman that we know, um, I just don't really think that much about it. Like, I don't feel like it's as necessary as other people do. What do you think, Chase?
Well, I mean, just in regards to this, I already kind of mentioned about Mike not being able to protect Papa, 24/7. But a lot of people ask, why didn't Nacho go down shooting and try to take as many people out with him using Bolsa as a meat shield? And I think the reason is if he would have done that, it just would have increased the likelihood that the cartel would have seeked revenge on Papa. So by just taking himself out and no one else, I feel like he minimized that chance. It's still possible, but he really tried keeping it to a minimum.
Yeah, I think he kept up his end of the deal in that, and I think that was a big point. And again, people thought that would make it more tragic if he went through all of that and not, and still wasn't able to save him. But I just really don't really like it unless it's, there's more to it than that. What do you got, Gil?
I mean, I agree with everything you guys are saying. The one thing I'd add is that right now Gus has eyes everywhere. They suspect that Lalo Salamanca might show up, or the Salamancas might show up. So, I mean, is it possible that, of course, they can't be everywhere at once, but right now they're at DEFCON 1. So, at least at the moment, if everyone in the audience, and it seems like a lot of people are thinking that Nacho's father might still have a target on his back because the Salamancas are just so viciously thirsty for payback, even when they've already had it, they want more. Maybe it's possible that some resources are being dedicated to watching him. But again, yeah, it doesn't feel right to me that he would get killed, and not right as in morally right. Of course, that doesn't feel right. But from a storytelling standpoint, it doesn't feel right that we're going to revisit that. But with so many people bringing it up, I mean, I have to be humble and say I might just be wrong. So we'll see.
Yeah, and that just goes without saying. I could always be wrong. Um, I
Impossible, Pete.
Oh
yeah.
god, if I had a nickel for every theory. I mean, I did a theory a few weeks ago that that Mike would be the one to kill Nacho, and obviously that fell flat. So as
Mhm.
likely as you think something is, you never know. But yeah, it would really suck if Nacho died in vain and his father still ends up dying.
Yeah. And yeah, and like and if you guys are curious about that, go back and watch our season 3 stream, because Jim from Bald Move, he made some pretty good points in there that made me reconsider it, where it was kind of a closed, I was kind of thinking of it with a closed mind of, like, it just wouldn't be good. And he brought up some interesting points in that. Jeffrey Townsend, thank you again for the 10 Canadian. I'm curious on an opinion as to why Jimmy did not have much of a reaction to Kim having their front door barricaded. Would you not have thought something was up? I didn't really, that didn't really occur to me when I was watching the episode. Did either of you guys have You guys are both.
I'm here. Do you hear me?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
So,
here.
all right. I just noticed that I was seeing a muted thing on my screen, and it was weird that you both did it at the same time. So yeah, did you guys think about that he didn't notice about the barricade?
I mean, initially when Kim put the door there, put the chair there, I thought, that's going to be a little bit of a giveaway that she's worried, and maybe that lets on that she knows something he doesn't. But I think I kind of stopped thinking about that when Jimmy made the comment, "Oh, you too." Like he just reads that as, even though Lalo is dead, as far as we know, you are also still paranoid. So he didn't seem thrown by it, and I think it's as simple as that. He's still feeling paranoid. So he's not surprised that she is too.
Yeah, that's kind of the
Yeah,
way I took it.
yeah. See, when I first saw that, cause that part happens before Jimmy's like, "Oh, I'm glad he's dead." So at first, when he's like, "Oh, you too? Glad I'm not the only one." I'm like, "Wait, did Kim tell him about Lalo still being alive?" But
Yeah.
now it's just kind of, Jimmy's still suffering from the PTSD. He's probably still paranoid of that. He's relieved that he thinks Lalo is dead, but maybe he just thinks that Kim is still paranoid like him because of his PTSD.
Yeah, good points. Good points. BrBa, thank you for the 4.99. How do you guys feel about the theory that Huel or Kim? That was a little bit worded a little bit strangely, but I
Oh,
still wasn't.
he's saying Huel ate Kim, I think is the intent
Oh
there.
no.
I'm not sure if he's saying ate or is. Huel is Kim
Well,
or
read the
Huel
second
ate Kim.
sentence. I think it'll clear it up.
Oh, okay. This would explain his exponential weight gain in between the two shows.
Oh no.
I
I
think
gotta
that
say, I think Jonathan in the chat who's saying, I think we got to get to discussing the rest of the episode. This probably is not appeasing him, but yeah, sorry, Pete, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, I just think that it would be hard if he did do that, then Jimmy doesn't know about it because Jimmy would not be the happy-go-lucky guy we see in Breaking Bad if he knew that the guy he generally has around for security ate his wife. I mean, I think that would be a little bit of a unsatisfying thing there.
I mean, good meme, bro. I think he's onto something. Wendy is Kim. Kim runs off with Lalo. All of that. I would like to, get back to talking about the episode, but I really do enjoy all of these super chats and just the outpour of support here is just wonderful, and it's really getting my head turning about all of these different Better Call Saul topics. Some of which I haven't even thought about in over a year, such as the 4 or 5 flash forward and things like that. So I mean keep them coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to check because Gil, you were talking about time, or we're at 2 hours. So if you need to bow out at any moment, just let me know, and
Yeah, I think
we'll
I'll
be
set a time limit for myself. And just there's so many people here. And so I feel bad leaving, but I do have things I need to get back to. So I'll say I'll stick around for like another 15 minutes. And,
yeah,
and one thing I'll say is, I think we're allowing the conversation to be guided by a lot of the super chats, but I think that's part of the purpose of the live stream is we're not necessarily intending to do a full recap of the episode. It's kind of like, let's talk about all the stuff that's on everyone's minds. And then I think each of us are doing recaps and full episode reviews on our individual channels. So if you get to the end of one of these streams and somehow we didn't talk about that one thing you wanted us to talk about, chances are we at least each have individually discussed it on our channels.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. I
100%.
come here. Yeah, I come here. I make a detailed recap, and before I do this, and I come here so that I can have a discussion with my guests and answer people's questions. And if they're gonna make a super chat, then I'm definitely going to I appreciate that, so I'm definitely going to respond to it. And it would be an ideal situation if people only threw out super chats about what we were talking about, but that's just not how conversations work. So this is I'm fairly comfortable with the way that this plays out. And if you do, like as Gil said, if you want just a straight recap, then I've got one right over there in my on my channel that you can watch if that's what you're looking for. All right, so one more on here. We'll clear this one off before we move back into the thing, if there's no other ones, and that's Rakes Muhammad. Thank you for the $4.99. How do you think they introduced the disappearer? And Gil, you have anything you want to throw out there? Because like I said, I think that there has been some indications about that.
I
Now.
think. Oh, okay. I find it so funny that I don't watch the Next Time On preview, so it feels like about 1,000 people are just tiptoeing around just to protect me from a few spoilers that have been dropped. My thought, and maybe you all know that I'm wrong about this, but it's the vet Caldera. He's been the go-to guy that knows everybody in the underworld, so I've always thought it was going to come from him.
Nice. And there's one. Go ahead if you want. If you have one.
Oh, I was just gonna make a joke and say no comment, but to actually elaborate on what Gil just said, I'd like to challenge you, Gil. I mean, if Caldera's the one that gives Jimmy Ed's number, then why can't Mike get Ed's number too from Caldera? Because Mike never knew about Ed in Breaking Bad, so that's the only thing. Because I do think it is Caldera, but that's just kind of irking me. It would kind of seem a little bit illogical.
Well, maybe it never came up, right? It just
Yeah, I
never
guess that's
came up in
true.
conversation.
I guess Caldera isn't really in the picture in Breaking Bad anymore either, at least that we know of, right? So, I mean, who knows where that goes.
The Frenchiest Fry, $1.99. Gus finds love theories, and this refers to something that Peter Gould he gave kind of like a rundown of all the characters, and whenever he was asked about Gus, that's what he said. Gus finds love, and it is kind of a weird comment based on what we've seen so far. There's nothing. There's not love is not in the air in Gus's storyline right now. So I'm wondering about this too. I don't have any great answers. Some of the more out there theories were that he was going to hook up with Howard. That seems less likely at this point in the game. You guys have anything for that?
Maybe we're not interpreting it. We're interpreting it the way that you would at face value, that Gus finds love for himself. But maybe this is a vague way of saying Gus finds the concept of love. For example, he finds out that Jimmy and Kim are in love and decides to protect that love, or he protects Nacho's father, the love of a father. So these are theories I've come up with in the last like 60 seconds.
Yeah.
But just the idea that maybe we're going to find out that this thing Peter Gould said is accurate, but just not in the way we thought.
Yeah, no, I should add that. Yeah, they were all vague and open to multiple interpretations. That was sort of the point of how he threw the stuff out there. So, it definitely wasn't like he's literally going to, find the life partner or something like that.
I mean, I think Gus already did potentially find love, and Hector and Don Eladio might have ruined that for him. So, all of the reason why Gus wants revenge.
Yeah. Robert Lukowski, thank you for the $1.99. There's no question attached, so I'll just thank you for the donation. Maud Mary, $4.99. Thanks again. Who is due the Sandpiper money professionally, Jimmy or Saul? Who is Kim legally married to? Kim is married to Jimmy McGill, I think. Does anybody?
Well, so one little nuance is that Jimmy McGill has not legally changed his name to Saul Goodman. He asks for a DBA at the end of season 4, doing business as. So he practices as Saul Goodman,
Okay.
but his real name legally, I believe, is still Jimmy McGill.
Absolutely.
Okay. So thanks for clearing that up, Gil, because that's been something I've been wondering about, because I initially thought that was the case, but in the 601 Breaking Bad flash forward, when you look at the pill bottles, you see that it is prescribed to Saul Goodman. So maybe he does eventually change his name in between 2004 and 2008. But yeah, it kind of confused me when I saw that in 601.
Yeah, I thought that. Yeah, I thought that was something that was weird too. There really wasn't a good reason for that for his medicine to have that name on it. but I think we'll probably learn more about that as we go on. As far as I don't think that there's any legal shenanigans going on. I think that's what this is kind of leaning towards. I think that whatever even if Kim is trying to scam Jimmy, or she gets the inclination to scam him later, I don't think she'll have any problem getting that money off of him if that's the case. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that's not going to be the point, as like she's going to try to, use her status as his wife and then be foiled by the fact that, something's not up on the up and up with the paperwork. But, we'll see. And now we're clear on the super chat. So if you want to pick back up with the episode, Chase, with Howard, you can just start right back up.
Yeah, for sure. So first off, I just want to say that whenever you think you've seen the last of Erin Brill, she pops up again. Like, ugh. I mean, her actor does a really good job, but I just got a bone to pick with her. But so her, Howard, and Cliff, they're speaking to the residents of Sandpiper. They're becoming almost as impatient as Jimmy and Kim in regards to settling the case. The elders do bring up a good but dark point. They're all kind of near the ends of their lives. They don't really have that much time to wait around just to squeeze out every last possible drop. Now, Howard does a great job selling them on the idea to wait a bit longer. And, I kind of mentioned this quickly earlier. It kind of parallels Jimmy back in the first 3 seasons working on elder law with elders in general. Because, Jimmy isn't the only one good at talking to elders. And considering how proud Cliff seems to be of Howard, I initially thought that, maybe he's coming around, he won't confront him about the whole thing, but as it's clearly not the case. So after multiple schemes to slander Howard's good name, Cliff's had enough and he decides to confront Howard about it. Now, as we know, Cliff mentioned to Kim that his son has a drug problem, which has obviously taken a lot out of him. Who knows how many years Cliff's son has been dealing with the drug issues. It's probably why Cliff recognizes what a drug baggie looks like from 601. And so he just has all of these preconceived notions of what an addict is. And I don't know, it's hard to help an addict get better in the first place, especially if they don't want to even help themselves. And, having that whole parent-child relationship creates an even larger disconnect due to the child wanting to disobey or not take them seriously. And I just feel like Cliff has heard everything in this regard. He has that personal connection from denying the drugs, saying that he doesn't do them, or saying he's not doing them anymore, or that he has no idea what Cliff is talking about. So this is why Cliff instantly cuts to the chase with Howard, and denying what Cliff believes is the truth will just make him further not believe Howard's defense. And that's why he says, I just want you to know that I know, because, regardless of all the excuses that he thinks that Howard is giving him, I want you to know that I know. And I just think it's kind of hilarious the way that Howard just cuts Cliff off and totally disregards his accusations and concerns from here on out, leaving abruptly. Because, initially Cliff wouldn't tell him that he met with Kim or that he met with the Kettlemans. But when he finally lets it slip that he was with Kim when he saw the whole Wendy scheme, Howard puts 2 and 2 together. And I really love the ending line here. He has a problem, but it's not what Cliff thinks. He doesn't have a drug problem. He has a McGill problem. And I don't know. It's just the second that he hears Kim's name, he just puts the clues together and he's like, all right, I'm not dealing with this conversation. I gotta go take care of something, like, peace out. So I don't know. I really like that confrontation. I was waiting for it for a few episodes ever since they started setting up Cliff with all of this. And yeah, I think it was a really great scene.
Gil?
Yeah, it's one of those things that I saw a lot of comments where people enjoyed this episode even less than last week's, and last week's was pretty controversial just because I think people are so antsy for the big plot things to move forward. I think a big part of whether or not this episode will work for you is how much you could enjoy being in the moment for some of these scenes, because we all knew this confrontation was coming. This is kind of the punchline to the setup from the last few episodes, going all the way back to Cliff seeing the drugs fall out of Howard's locker. We knew at some point he would reach a boiling point in his suspicions, and we see that here. And for me, it was a ton of fun because you realize how brilliant the setup is. It's the power of reframing. When you look at Howard, you see him as a really motivated, energetic guy. But as soon as someone says cocaine to you, you see, yeah, he is a really energetic guy. And now you're seeing it through Cliff's eyes and seeing how nervous Cliff looks in that sandpiper scene, how scared he is when Howard stands up to take control of the meeting, worried that he's going to totally mess everything up. I was laughing. I was laughing throughout that entire sequence. I was laughing at the confrontation. So we all knew it was coming, but I just thought it was pulled off it's such a viscerally enjoyable way. And now we're at that point. We are now at the point where Howard knows Jimmy and Kim are behind this, and now it starts to progress. So I kind of loved all of it.
Yeah, and I don't have a whole lot to add at this juncture. You guys went through most of it, but I think that one, it was really good to see. It was really good to see Howard in all of his glory. Standing up there and selling the idea, like that you pointed out, Chase, that these are people who don't have a lot of time to wait, and he's selling them the idea of waiting. That it's the right thing to do, and also what you were saying, Gil, like the as soon as I saw Ed Begley, I mentioned it earlier, Ed Begley Jr. does such a good job in this. I really enjoyed Cliff Main in a way that I never had before in this episode. And when he started seeing the leg bouncing, it's coming. He's going to have to get this stuff off of his chest. So I thought they handled that really well. And, obviously the fact that he has a history with his own family, and, he's inclined not to believe whatever Howard tells him. And then I really thought that the Howard line, cancel my week. He just sort of, he first is Howard Hamlin to the core. He says, I know this was hard for you. Thank you for coming to me as a friend. But then he just goes and he's just like, clear my week, and now I'm going to fight. It was the change that we've all been kind of waiting for from Howard. And it's great that it finally is upon us. And really quickly, Whisper Gaming 999, thank you for that. When Jimmy and Kim get married, the judge paused when he said her name. Do you think that's just a slip or a blip or something more sinister? I don't know. People have brought this up as like that might be part of her changing her name. I don't think that that's a lock. It is interesting that they stop on it, that they kind of mention it. But like, if you were going to change your name, why would you not add a middle name if that was such a big deal? So I don't put a lot of stock in it. Do either of you guys?
I mean, well, it is kind of a theory floating out there in the wind about maybe Kim has already changed her name. Like maybe they get the disappear because she already has that connection. But I'm pretty sure that during the Kim flashback to her as a kid with her mom drunk driving, pretty sure her mom does call her Kim. So unless she just changed her last name or something like that, I don't know. I mean, some people do just not have middle names.
Mm-hmm. Gil.
Yeah. Honestly, nothing to add from me. I feel like I need to rewatch that scene to see what people are referencing here. But I'll just say I'm going to bow out at this time. So I just want to say this was awesome, and I want to thank everybody for participating. And I mean, all the kind comments they really make it. I've had some bad days where a nice comment is the thing that turns it around. So we definitely appreciate everybody getting involved to make this live stream so much fun. So thank you, Pete, for having me on. And I'll talk to you again next week. And also VividKiwi, Chase, great to meet you.
Yeah. It was great talking, man. I really enjoyed this convo, and yeah, big fan of your Saul cast too. I check that out when I can. So I love the stuff you're doing over there.
Awesome, thanks, man.
Yeah,
well,
thanks.
Have a good one.
Thanks again, Gil. We'll see you next week, and I'll talk to you before that.
Sounds
thanks
good.
for being here.
Take care, everyone.
Yep. Okay, and so we have one other quick one here. Robert Lukowski, 199. Thank you for that. Ice Station Zebra, is Kim receiving alimony? That's a statement. It could be the truth. It doesn't feel like it's going in that direction right at this moment, but who knows? You have anything you want to add to that?
I mean, about a year ago, I did a full Ice Station Zebra Theory Explained. The two moments that pique my interest are the fact that Kim is the one that shows Jimmy the Ice Station Zebra movie. I think her father really liked the movie or something, and then just the whole Walt and Skylar, what is Ice Station Zebra? And that's the thing that actually gets Walt to introduce Skylar to Saul. So I think that either one, it is Kim, or two, Saul just names it that in memory of Kim.
Yeah, and they've had the Ice Station Zebra check up on the mirror in their apartment ever since they got that, after they watched the movie together. So, it's a
Yeah.
name that it's common to their whole experience. I don't think it's 100% like, oh, well, he named his company that, so that means that Kim is still involved. You know what I mean? It's a chance to I mean, that could be a hint, but it might not be either. So I
Could just
guess
be
that
that he
we
misses her, you know?
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of stuff like that in their story. So, do we have anything else? I just wanted to say one other thing. Like, there's a moment in the with Ed Begley Jr. where he thinks that he's making a breakthrough with Howard about, you can just it's no problem to ask for help, and Howard does that, but then he changes it up. He says that his problem isn't drugs, it's Jimmy. But there's this scene where he's like so overjoyed that this is coming up, and then he just sort of drops. And I really thought that was a great exchange between those two actors. Do you have anything
Yeah.
else that you want to add on the Howard stuff before we move on?
No, I'm pretty good to move on, honestly. I said most of my opinions. Just, yeah, I really like the scene, and I really do love how just the second that, Cliff mentions Kim, it just suddenly all makes sense, and all of Howard's stress goes away, and it goes from confusion and stress and almost anxiety into just anger towards Jimmy and Kim. He's just fed up with it because he already tried confronting Jimmy in season 5, and the thing is about the Wendy scheme is it relates back to Jimmy sending sex workers to their lunch because Cliff was with Howard in season 5 when that happened. So this is probably why Cliff thinks that, it's been going on for a while.
Yeah, and we'll come back to that when we get into the fight, because that really comes, that's not just that actually comes out into, he clears the air about some of that stuff. So to go really quickly before we go there, Jimmy does establish his office at the strip mall in this episode. We touched on it a little bit. I don't think we need to linger too much, but it was nice to see Francesca's return. And I don't know why, but the music drop here, like, her listening to Wilson Phillips when she pulled up, that just seemed hilarious to me. Like, to the point where I was like, wait a minute, that's not even a contemporary song, right? Like, that's much older. And I had to look it up and found out that it was like 15 years old by the time that she's rocking it in the strip mall parking lot there. The only thing that I would add, I mean, obviously it's fun to see Jimmy and, Bob Odenkirk kind of portraying the character as Saul. Like, you see that seeping. In my opinion, you see that seeping into the performance more. But Francesca, I wonder, because we always have kind of thought of her as she was this really nice person from the MVD that they meet back in season 2, and then she comes back later and just gets ground down by this life as being connected to Saul and being around him. But here it kind of makes it feel like she's more of a willing participant. She just needs the right incentives. Did
Yeah,
you
she
have any of
just
that?
need Yeah, she definitely just needs to be coerced. I mean, he gives her the whole like, Sanders is to chicken, Goodman is to the law, and as convincing as that whole speech was, like she definitely just needed some cold hard cash in order to be convinced. And same thing with the 405 flash forward, right? Like she just kind of gives them the look that, give me another kind of wad of cash here. And it is kind of a de-evolution of the character, just like all the characters on this show, because she is all sweet and innocent in season 3, but then I was actually just rewatching the last few episodes of season 4 of Breaking Bad, and the moment where Walt breaks through the door and is like, "Oh, Saul, I need him now," and then Francesca just starts giving him the business, and in order for her to tell him where Saul is, she's like, "Oh, I think that that window's gonna cost 20,000. He's like, what? And then and once he
Mhm.
finally realizes what's going on, she's like, 25. So she is built of some sterner stuff herself, that's for sure. I'm really glad to see her back on the show. Been waiting for her return for quite a while now. I'm really glad she's back in the fold, and I can't wait to see what more comes from her.
Yeah, and yeah, that's what I thought, that, that she was getting ready to leave until he mentioned the money. And I thought that that stood out because of those scenes you're talking about, where she does that. She sort of, she was sort of, she was kind of low key, like not really, just she was just sort of there. And then whenever money came up, she was like, like that scene you're talking about, and the quite a ride one, where she's just like, you got to give me more money. Whisper Gaming 4.99. Howard's so interesting, and who's his wife? The woman Jesse was with in season 1, episode 1 of Breaking Bad. Just kidding, mostly. So yeah, we don't really know much about his wife. But I hope we do learn a little bit more. I just had I made a video about why they were going after Howard, and that was one of the things, is that he's always been around, but they never really fleshed him out. And that now that he's kind of locked in this situation with them, it'll be interesting to see what more we learn about him as they go on. And one thing I learned about making that video is that people that like him, who maybe think that, people don't give him a fair shake because he was born into it, man, they come out of the woodwork whenever you try to discredit him in any way.
Definitely got some Howard stands, that's for sure. I mean, I do
Yeah.
like the guy, ever since it turns out that he's not Darth Vader and Chuck is, and he's just his puppet. Like, did gain a lot of sympathy for him, and I realized, he's not really that bad of a guy, but he is still a little bit of a prick. I mean, I am a huge Howard fan. I wish the best for him. I feel really bad for him, but I'm not gonna be stand alone on that island and just praise him because he does have different sides to him. I mean, and I don't know, man. That's just the thing.
Yeah, he's a complicated character, and he's a good character that I enjoy watching. I think some people, like, they got kind of defensive and really just, about a fictional character and what these characters are doing, like what their reasoning is, not what is morally correct or what I think personally, which I just found it kind of funny. But, talking of Howard, we do get to see this fight, and you know,
Yes.
I I don't know, like, to me, it was awkward. It was like a purposefully awkward situation, because this is 2, like, older men who aren't necessarily training or in shape, and those kinds of fights aren't really that glamorous, Like, when I was making the video, I just kinda thought that there's the way that Howard sees this, like, he's gonna do this man to man. He's gonna give Jimmy a chance to fight it out with him, and it's gonna be dramatic. But the way it looks is just kind of pathetic. So what was your take on the actual fight, like the mechanics of the fight playing out?
I mean, so we've kind of seen it teased in trailers since before season 6 started, but I didn't actually think that they'd be fighting each other. Like, I thought maybe Howard was betting on a fight, or maybe he was in a fight himself, but that Jimmy, it was going to be one of his schemes to kind of rig the match against Howard or in his own favor. And I thought he was going to mess with a boxing fight. I wasn't sure that they were actually going to fight themselves. And then you see Jimmy start to walk away, and then he caves in and they fight. And that did genuinely get me hyped because, I wasn't really expecting it. I thought Jimmy was just going to be like, haha, funny jokes and walk away. But and the way that he does walk away and then stop for a moment and then he goes back, it reminds me of in episode 601, where he's at the clubhouse and he kind of gets told no, and then he starts walking away, and then he thinks for a minute, and then he goes back and purposely starts that argument with Kevin. So it's just sort of him giving in when he knows that he shouldn't. And yeah, it was a purposely sloppy fight. I do think that they just kind of haphazardly fight each other, as Jimmy in particular stumbles around the ring, obviously not knowing proper form or punches. one point where you think Jimmy's gonna quit, he comes back full force and just tackles Howard, which, okay, sure, and Jimmy does get one good punch in, but Howard retaliates with that double combo, giving Jimmy, I think it was a sucker punch or a hook, and then that uppercut to finish him off. I mean, I tweeted about that. That uppercut just made my jaw drop. Like, I'm not entirely surprised that Howard won, but still can't believe it happened. I definitely would have paid good money to see this fight in person, not gonna lie.
Yeah, I didn't think it was going to happen either, and I could have. It wasn't. I think it was. The intention was for it to be funny. I didn't find it funny in the same way that I did, like, say, the opening sequence where they impersonated him and stole his car in the last
Hmm.
episode. I thought it paled in comparison there. But like I said, I did like the idea of just, his frustration. Like, Howard is what can Howard do? I mean, like, they're literally doing, like, pranks, you know what I mean? From his perspective.
Yeah.
Like, pranks that he can't do anything about, but they have actual, they have repercussions for his career and everything else. So it's terribly annoying. And so he resorts to the PI, which is, I think, is pretty fascinating because of the fact that
Hmm.
Mike already has guys following them because of Lalo.
Yeah.
And there's some real potential for crossover there where things could get dark and bring Howard into the other side, which he doesn't have there's no other way for that to happen, really. The way he lives his life, he just wouldn't get sucked into that if Kim and Jimmy weren't doing these schemes and trying to force this Sandpiper settlement. So there's some real stakes there. Do you have anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, actually, I believe there was a super chat that mentioned the PI earlier, and I was kind of biting my tongue a little bit just specifically for this moment. Because you are kind of right, like, what can Howard do? Like, he's just going to try and let Jimmy blow off some steam and that's it. But, after he goes and talks to the PI, it's kind of revealed that the fight wasn't just to box Jimmy. It was actually a bit of a misdirect and distraction, because after the fight, he goes to the PI, hires him, says he wants him to follow Jimmy. And the thing is, we were suspecting that Howard would hire a PI against Jimmy and Kim for a while. And the most
Mhm.
popular theory of who was following Jimmy and Kim at the end of 602 was that Howard got a PI. So it was surprising that it was actually Mike's men. But now we finally get to that point where Howard's fighting back. He's hired a PI. Happened, 2 episodes later than we thought. But yeah, this could be very dangerous, because just who knows when Lalo will return, or any other cartel member that might want to work with Jimmy or have him defend them legally. I'm definitely worried that Howard's PI may find some sort of cartel connection with Jimmy and Kim, causing Howard to get involved with the cartel side of things. It's no secret anymore that, Jimmy represented Lalo, so Howard may want to look further into it. And so Howard and his PI sneaking around being nosy towards Jimmy and Kim might result in the PI being killed, or even Howard too, or at least kidnapped and scared to death. And to bring up another point that you made real quick, since Mike's men are following Jimmy and Kim around, will they have some sort of conflict of interest in regards to Howard's PI too? Because now we do have two separate groups or parties trying to follow around and track Kim and Jimmy. So I wonder if they will clash at all.
Yeah. I think it's, that I saw a lot of other people bringing that up in the comments of my video, that they were thinking the same thing. So I think we're supposed to be thinking that. And it makes you worry a little bit about Howard and his safety, like you said. Then they go back home. Jimmy comes back home, and there's a nice shot where Kim smiles when she sees him pull up, just to remind you that they are in love, regardless of whatever else is going on. And then that sort of drops whenever she sees that he has an ice pack on his head. And we kind of touched on the thing from Viola already. I do think that there's a possibility that they're going to be impersonating that judge at some point, based on what they said there about the handlebar mustache. And but more, I think what the big part of all of this is that they weren't at all. There was no, like, oh my God, Howard figured us out. Like, it was completely part of their plan. And that's what I had been saying from the beginning. Like, from the moment that I watched the first trailer, it didn't make sense to me that they could because back then you thought that Howard was going to be building a case against them, and none of that made sense because
Right.
these guys are good at running scams. They're not going to give him an open, and so then I thought the natural thing must be that that's part of their plan, and we see that that's true, but we have no idea what their plan is or what they're planning on doing with that. And I think that's another place where this gets a little frustrating for me. There's like, there's like a mystery of what's going to happen, and you're going to have good reveals and payoffs to those things, and that'll all make sense later. But then there's also the thing of just kind of feeling a little bit confused, and I do feel a little bit confused about after seeing them in bed together. Jimmy is kind of the audience proxy there because he's confused. He doesn't know why he fought Howard. Kim feels completely certain that he does, and I guess it's because she feels like he's guilty. He feels guilty about what they're about to do, but at the same time, we don't know what they're going to do. They just she does, and she feels confident about it, but we might have to wait an episode or two to find out.
Yeah, well, that's a really good point, and that's an interesting perspective. Like, I am wondering, like, did they always intend on Howard finding out eventually? Because the thing is with Saul Goodman and Jimmy McGill and Slip and Jimmy, like his whole life, like everyone knows what he's doing, but that Bill Oakley line, there's proving it and then there's knowing it. Everyone knows, but it's just trying to prove it. Jimmy always gets away with it. So and yeah, they don't really seem shocked that he's on to them. They're like, all right, cool, let's just continue on with screwing with him.
Yeah, I do think I think that it's definitely part of their plan. And I guess that's really the main thing, the main points about everything in the United States. And I think we can now shift over to Germany. But first, I guess we should touch on the teaser. You guys mentioned it earlier. I don't think I chimed in really. I did like this. I didn't know what was going on. I did think about Werner right away whenever I saw the slide rule. Well, not maybe right away, but as I went through list of characters that this might be connected to, that was the one that it landed on. So I felt that was pretty satisfying, but it was also mysterious. And like I said, you get trained when you watch Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul that if they introduce something, there will be a payoff. And they did the same thing with the piece of glass in episode 3, and they
Yes,
do
I
it
was gonna
again
say that.
here. And I appreciate that. I like feeling like I'm on the inside of, like I'm in on the inside of the story that they're telling or whatever, that we have this thing going, this connection going on with what's happening. As far as the thing with Germany, like I said, I couldn't imagine that he was anywhere else, so it was just a matter of time of revealing that. But I also wasn't ready for how they put it together. Like, it was actually pretty satisfying to see him come up to her at the bar. I mentioned his American accent, him pulling that out. It was really spot on. And Gil was talking about how they built her up pretty effortlessly because of what we know about her from her husband. And yeah, I mean, I just felt like I was right there. And this, if you watch this out of context, if you didn't know what was going on, that this could have been any kind of, romantic, meeting in a movie or whatever. And I kind of think because my wife watches a lot of Korean TV, and every once in a while I'll see, and she'll be watching some kind of K drama or something, and
Oh yeah.
it kind of felt like that it could have just been something that I could have seen in the screen looking over her shoulder like that. You know what I mean? What do you got
Yeah.
about what do you got
Um
about Germany?
so real quick about the intro or the teaser, I do want to say that the whole German song playing during the cold open, I believe the name of the song is In Stiller Nacht, and the German track is the first hint on what happens and what the plaque is about, along with I don't speak German, but I in Lieb dein Jungs, which translates roughly to with love, your boys. And so I was like, are they really doing this? Are they really going to go there? Are we actually going to see something more that involves Werner? And that's exactly what happened. And I was almost in denial when I first, I saw the arcade machine in Germany and or in German, letters,
Mhm.
and then we see Werner's wife there, or widow. And I don't know, when we first saw that, I was just in shock and denial. I had no clue this was going to happen, so when it did, I was really surprised. And I got to say, Lalo must have done some research in order to find out where she would be. I don't know exactly what. Could have put a tracker on her car, but we assumed that he didn't know where she lived until he walked her home. So how did he do that? Did he just, I don't know. I don't know what kind of research he could have done. I feel like that might be a bit of a plot hole, but again, the show just tends to not focus on things that may not be particularly important, just like how we didn't necessarily see Nacho get smuggled back to Albuquerque. We just kind of saw him get out of the truck. So but in regards to Werner's wife, I mean, back in the season 4 finale, considering that Werner had to kind of act like an ass to her for their final conversation in order to stop her from coming to America, saved her life, but it made her almost essentially hate him. Like, she'll never know how much he truly cared for her in his final moments. He made her think that he only cared about his work instead of her. So that already kind of broke my heart. Like, I was really depressed from Werner's fate in the season 4 finale. So now to return to that with the Werner story arc, but show more elaboration on how distraught the wife is due to the mysterious and isolating circumstances, it really is heartbreaking. And I think the actor that played, I think her name's Marguerite or something like that.
Yeah,
I think
that's
I
right.
think she, yeah, I think she did an amazing job. I really felt for her, but that being said, wow, did Lalo ever put the moves on her? He's just so devilishly charismatic. He knows how to play that part of a true gentleman with manners, and that's the thing. Like, he's so charismatic. That's why he brings new life to the show, because this is a skill trait that I don't think we've ever seen from any other Salamanca. It's deadly, both metaphorically and sometimes literally. But Twitter was going crazy, a little bit thirsty for Lalo last night. I just can't believe that Lalo almost slept with her. And on the other hand, their conversation was believable and incredibly smooth. So, as you're saying, if you saw this out of context, then you'd totally believe that this was naturally happening. It made sense that it could be a possibility.
Yeah, and I tell you, like, the way that the way that we've been kind of trained to see that whenever he's at his most charismatic, that they remind us how brutal he can actually be. That was where that like I didn't feel a lot of tension as far as Marguerite. Like I didn't really it didn't really dawn on me that her dying would improve the story at all. And then if you think about it some more, then you think like, well, okay, if he did do that, like Gus is probably still keeping tabs on her, so that might even come back on him because he doesn't know that Gus thinks that he's still alive. So her dying, or disappearing would definitely be like, on his radar or whatever.
Hmm.
Where I was really worried was about the dog. Like, I thought for sure that he was going to kill this dog. I
Oh
don't know.
yeah.
Like, when he came up and he's getting ready to leave, she says, "Oh yeah, just me and the dog," and so it was totally there on the radar. And then he comes in and I'm like, "Oh man, if he kills this dog, like, I love this character. I'll enjoy the character either way, but this is going to like, he killed someone in the beginning of the first episode to burn his body, as a body double, but like I really couldn't abide the dog if he was going to go that far." So I thought that was a funny way that they kind of skirted around that, added a little bit of weird tension there.
I
And
mean, I
then,
real No,
go
no,
ahead.
sorry. Oh yeah, yeah. I was just gonna elaborate on the dog. Like, I feel like I think the name of the dog was Little Bear.
Yeah.
It was really a surprise star in this episode. I mean, everyone loves the dog, right? And just kind of doing that cliche where you kill the dog on a show. I mean, like, I'm about to cry more than than how depressed I was about Nacho. I do think that little bear lives up to his name, you know, alerting Marguerite that Lalo was there by barking his little head off. I do love the way that Lalo just kind of talks to the cute pupper, like he kind of gives his puppy dog voice to him, like,
Mhm.
shoo, be quiet. I really did like that moment. I didn't really think that he was gonna kill the dog, but when the dog wouldn't stop barking, I mean, like, big yikes. It was definitely a thought that went through my head.
Yeah, and in my video, I was just saying how, I was relieved to find out that his charms, extend to the animal kingdom, right? Like he can charm people, but he can also uh charm beasts whenever it's necessary, even in like a foreign language. So that was a pretty cool thing to kind of
Yeah, I
make him
saw.
even more of a legend, I guess.
Yeah, I saw a tweet calling Lalo a dog whisperer, so I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so while he's there, she comes back. Well, he was going to go in with her at night. She doesn't invite him in, so he just basically lurks in her neighborhood until morning, and he sees her leave. He sneaks in. We already talked about his encounter with the dog, and then she comes back. And what I liked about this, again, I didn't really think that he was going to kill her. Like that there was tension in that there's going to be a confrontation. It wasn't really about her dying so much, but then what I really liked about that is how they mixed in him figuring out this thing is important. The slide rule is important, and you're watching and you put it together almost in the same amount of time that he does, or I guess if you were distracted by something else, then you put it together after the scene is over, because there's only one real reason why that would make sense. It ties back to the teaser. They showed that being made. We know it was made somewhere. We know someone bought it. So that him seeing the name of that underneath means that he's going to go find out who commissioned this thing, and that's going to lead him closer to what Gus was doing under the laundry.
Yeah, yeah, I agree completely. So, I don't know. I definitely think that, he looks at it because he sees the manufacturer. He's going to go to the manufacturer and ask who the names of who ordered it, and then that's how he's going to get to Kai and the others, and then he's going to interrogate them. So, I mean, he really could leave a blood trail throughout this whole thing. He could have killed Marguerite, he could kill the manufacturer, he could kill Kai, but I mean, I feel like he only kills when he really needs to, and I mean, just the fact that Werner's wife didn't know Werner's men, Lalo takes things into his own hands literally by grabbing the plaque. I don't know, like, I'm just trying to think for a second here because Gus probably threatened Werner's workers to never have contact with Werner's family again, or else Gus would have killed them too, which is why they never met Werner's wife or why they never went to the funeral. And just those little things also really
Yeah,
pull at my heartstrings. This is why I really care for the wife here.
yeah, I think that was the implication of that. Like, I don't see why you would. I mean, obviously, they built up this whole, symbol that they mailed to her, and that's going to end up going against them. But that was what I interpreted, that like the whole part of him bringing that up at the bar was that we're supposed to know that, Mike and Gus threatened them not to go around her. You know what I mean? Because that way
Mhm.
she can't ask them questions about what happened.
Yeah, so another thing, once Marguerite got home, I realized that we were about to see the clips from the trailers. I know I mentioned trailer clips too much, but of Lalo sneaking around the house with a silenced pistol. I can't believe this whole time those trailer clips were Lalo in Werner's house. It blew
Yeah.
my mind. It made the situation even more tense before it even truly started. Then when she started creeping around her house with Lalo waiting for her, my heart was genuinely pounding. I was ready to yell and shout at the sight of Lalo killing her. Thankfully, that didn't happen. I mean, I really do care for her in this moment. And just for someone that we're seeing on screen for the first time, it's amazing how these show creators get me to care so much and feel so much about such a realistically insignificant character. I mean, it was just beautifully done. And there was a moment when Lalo was hiding in the house. I think, around the time he puts on the silencer, he almost had a look of sadness before he mentally realizes and decides that he might have to kill her if she discovers him. Because as much of a brutal killer that Lalo is, he did seem to genuinely enjoy his time with her, and he cares for her. I mean, maybe that's why he didn't want, try to go in and sleep with her, because he knew that he had other intentions or whatever, and so it's enough that he's using her. You don't want to just do that too. So I mean, I feel like he kind of respects her a little bit. Um, and so, he sneaks out the window to try to escape when normally he might have just killed her, like he killed the travel wire employee. But and also emotions aside, I mean, I did say that he could just leave a bloodbath in his wake, but it's possibly true that he didn't kill her or the dog in order to not raise suspicions, maybe back to Gus learning that Werner's wife was murdered.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, that like I said, I think that it would make sense for him to be keeping tabs on her. So right now, Lalo's advantage is that Gus thinks he's dead. We know that he doesn't think he's dead, but as far as Lalo's concerned, he does. You know what I mean? So it would blow his advantage that he has by blowing
And
up the idea that he's still
and
around.
and earlier in the stream, I think you are right in regards to thinking about the spicy curls, in regards to thinking about Madrigal and the German connection. Like if he's already thinking about Germany, and then he hears that Werner's wife was suddenly murdered, that might be all of the validation and update that he needs, that that Lalo's onto him about the South Wall.
Yeah, and I think that, like, what you were saying there, there is something to that about him not wanting to kill her, even though all the other things make sense too. They do allude to that a little bit on the Insider podcast. I think it was Alison Tatlock. Is that what the who wrote this episode? She says something about it, and they wanted to make that interaction at the bar, their meeting and their connection. They wanted that to actually be real. You know what I mean? Like that they really did. Like he wasn't just completely fooling her. You know what I mean? Like that they had like a
Mm-hmm.
genuine. They had a genuine kind of chemistry there, and that they were interested in each other at least. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like as they said, right, in another life, I really do feel like Lalo does respect her and kind of cares about her through that interaction.
Hmm. And, that's pretty much where things are left. I did like the touch of where she closes the window, and it's kind of a mirror image of the opening of the episode. That in the beginning of the teaser, the technician opens the cabinet before he makes the lucite uh, slide rule thing. We're getting up to almost 3 hours here, and I I
Wow.
can't I can't stay on indefinitely.
Yeah,
I
sadly, I know, right?
Yeah, I do. There's a couple of things, I guess. I don't have like an actual time when I have to leave. I'm supposed to be somewhere in 40 minutes, but that's kind of beside the point at the moment. I guess the reason that we were talking about this, and where we decided you would come on today, was that we had a little bit of a differing opinion as far as our feelings on the episode. Like I said, I pretty much made mine clear over here. The idea that we're
Mhm.
behind the characters and their planning, that's kind of grating on me a little bit. The low stakes involved in Gus, I think that's just kind of dragged on a little bit too long with him being paranoid. And then I just think that the fight and some of the other stuff didn't hit. It wasn't as entertaining for me as episode the stuff that they similar stuff that they did in the similarly paced episode 4. So I guess I give you a moment if you want to talk about the things that you really liked about it before we
Y-
we move on. Like
Yeah,
what
yeah.
really stood
So
out to you?
I mean, first off, there are a few things that I do agree with. Like I do see your points. I think that in episode 604, like we're wondering where Lalo is, and the characters are wondering just as much. So that really ramps up the anxiety. And then finally, we see where Lalo is at the end of this episode. But because it's at the end of the episode, we still had the whole episode of Gus still pretty much in that same state. And I do kind of wish that maybe they did something more with that side of the story. But again, it is Jimmy and Kim's story mainly. So I really enjoyed everything that went on. I honestly wasn't wasn't bored at all this episode. Like if you go back and look at all my tweets, I'm just spamming a bunch of live tweets, all my thoughts during the commercial breaks. I really did enjoy this episode a lot more than 604. And yeah, that's why I also thought that this conversation was going to be really interesting, because I didn't really like 604. You did. And then I like 605, and it seems that, you don't so much. So it feels like we almost have a flip flop there. So it's really interesting to hear your perspective and hear Gil's perspective. And I'm just glad I was able to share my opinions of this episode, because I just really, really like Francesca's character. I think, she has some balls. I'm glad that she's back on the show. I've been waiting for that for a long time. I've been waiting for the Cliff and Howard confrontation for a long time. We were predicting the Howard PI thing for a long time. I just feel like it's a lot of, we finally get Lalo this episode. I feel like there's just a lot of payoff, and it's like, yes, this is what I was waiting to see. So I'm really glad, with the way this episode turned out. And I'll definitely have to listen to the Insider podcast. I'm probably going to listen to it tonight, honestly, later on when I have some spare time. But yeah, I don't know. I just really enjoyed this episode. I'm glad that we got to see Lalo finally, and along with all the other things that I just said, I feel like it was, even though some people think it's a building episode, which it kind of is. Now Lalo is hopefully. I mean, do you think we're gonna get another full episode of Lalo in Germany? Trying to talk to the manufacturer and talk to Kai, or do you think maybe he could? That'd be like, the first half of his story for an episode. And then the second half, like maybe we actually will see him return, because I kind of hope that we see him back in Albuquerque, by next episode. I don't want it to just be the mid-season finale where we kind of get a standoff. I really hope that the wheels turn next episode leading into the mid-season finale. But yeah, I don't know. I really like this episode. I think it's a really strong one.
Yeah, I don't really know. They don't even. I think that they set it up good enough that they don't even have to show him going to the place that made the. Like, I would be okay with it if he just showed up at Kai's, wherever Kai is, or whoever he goes to see. You know what I mean? I think we
Yeah.
could put
Okay.
that together to speed that up a little bit. But there is a step. There's an actual step. He has to do something before he could head back to look for the proof. So you're right about that. That he might not be in New Mexico next episode either. So what does that mean for what's going on with Gus? You know what I mean?
Are we gonna get a third episode of him being paranoid with anxious OCD? I mean, what else? What else could he possibly do? Is he gonna have just kind of a mental breakdown? Like, already kind of had that with the toothbrush, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see where they go with that. And I think I watched the teaser. It looks like there's some interesting stuff coming. I don't have any, like, whenever I saw a lot of people, because I was somewhat critical of it whenever I was talking about it. Then I see a lot of people that are like, they're thinking they're in agreement by saying that it's a filler episode, or it's the worst of the season, or I hate it, like, and that's not really the position I'm coming from. I didn't find it
Mm-hmm.
as satisfying as some of the other episodes. Is more of it. I mean, I definitely feel like that the writers have earned the benefit of the doubt. Like, I remember season 4, there was a lot of people who were upset with some of the way things were playing out. I know some people who stopped watching it at the end of season 4. And I remember in season 5, people were complaining about the pace in the early going, and look how that turned out. You know what I mean? And, I thought that the show was pretty indulgent in the first couple of seasons in that regard as well. And I've said that. So, I'm glad that they did what they did, because now the way that the way that things are playing out, everything matters. You know what I mean? And I think the character
Mm-hmm.
development is what sets this show apart from lesser shows. But I didn't really, this one didn't have as much of that, I didn't think, as 604 did.
I mean, like, so first off, about season 4, there's some things that I just don't remember about it. I feel like it's my most forgettable season of the show, and honestly, it might be my least favorite. Like, I'm kind of a bit nervous for when I do my season 4 tier list because there are a lot of good moments, like the shootout with Nacho and the twins, Arturo covering that up, the Breaking Bad flash forward. But I I feel like that season did kind of drag a bit. And the thing about episode 604, it's not that I don't like the episode. It just feels like a normal Better Call Saul episode. It feels like something we would have seen in season 4 or season 2. And not every single episode needs to be this crazy, with Lalo and the twins and all of that, or sorry, Nacho and the twins. Not every episode needs to be crazy. We can't have building episodes, and in a way that is what 605 is. But I just feel like 605 is worthy of being a final season episode, and 604 just kind of feels like a normal episode, which again isn't bad. Like, I still like normal Better Call Saul episodes, but it just feels like something we would have seen in season 2 and not necessarily final season material.
Yeah, it's one of the weird things when we look at each one individually, they all become a part of a whole. And season 4 was a pretty good example of that, where there were times when I wasn't sure what they were doing, and I didn't really understand that we were supposed to be kind of feeling that way, because that's how Jimmy was feeling. And it took a little while, but when I go back and rewatch it now, I don't have that same experience. I love it. Like, it's a really great it's a really great journey for the character. And so, like, that's one of, like, when we're talking about individual episodes, some are gonna be more pleasing at the moment than others, but they're all part of a whole. So it's kind of a wasted endeavor anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that might be another thing about possible complaints about the last 2 episodes in regards to the pace, because I mean, I saw a comment in the chat, like, the show has always had that sort of pace. And maybe it's just the fact that I have noticed that a lot of people are jumping on board for the final season of Better Call Saul in a similar way that a lot of people jumped on to the final season of Breaking Bad. And it's just people are maybe, I don't want to assume things, but kind of am. I just feel like maybe people are used to binging the whole show, so just having to wait week to week now is just a little bit more strenuous. You kind of want more to happen, and sometimes you don't get it. But that being said, this episode was a little bit extended, because normally the episodes are around 42 to 46 minutes long, and this one clocked in at, I think, 51, 52 minutes. Like, I was watching it live on TV, and it went past the hour mark. Like, I think it was 15 minutes into the next hour. Now, obviously, that's including commercials, but usually a show will end exactly at that hour mark. So, including commercials, it was like 15 minutes extra. Not counting commercials, it was, probably like 5 to 10, 5, 7 minutes extra. They actually did the same thing with episode 602 as well during the double premiere. I mean, the end of 602 was about 15 minutes into the third hour. So, that's why 601 and 602 almost felt like a mini Better Call Saul movie that I almost enjoy more than El Camino. I really do like how they extend some of these episodes. They only make them as long as they feel like they need to. Like, I think 604 was a little bit shorter at like 42 minutes instead of the usual 46. But yeah, I don't know. It's always a little bit of a treat when you go past the hour mark and you realize the episode's not over yet.
Yeah. And speaking of time, I do think that I'm gonna have to wrap this up. It's always weird. Last week, I was in here by myself, and there were still more than 600 people, and it feels weird to shut it down. But 3 hours is kind of like where I think I start to lose my focus on what's happening. And
Yeah,
I do have an appointment in 30 minutes that I have to make, and it's going to take a little bit of time to get ready for that. So
no worries.
I'll just say thanks to everyone who showed up. We hit 1,000 this week. That was really cool. We've
Awesome.
kind of been going up each week, and that's a nice thing to see. I really enjoy getting to do that. So thank you to you guys for coming in and asking questions. And Gil's already gone, but I'll thank you again, Chase, for coming in and giving me a chance to talk a little bit more in depth and get different perspectives, because whenever I enjoy making you know, the recaps and doing it that way, but it limits the what you can do and the time constraints and just editing. You know, we always talk about this stuff when we're talking behind the scenes or whatever, you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty great that you can sit here and talk about this for 3 hours and people will show up and be engaged. So I feel pretty lucky and pretty thankful for that. You got anything
Yeah.
you can plug your stuff before we go?
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to say, of course, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. This was really a lot of fun. Those 3 hours just flew by, and it was also, with the help of all the super chats and all the interesting questions, it really got my brain spinning about Better Call Saul. And just as you were saying, being able to just openly discuss all of your thoughts, not having to worry about, oh, this video is going to take forever to edit. I'm not too familiar with live streams. I've never done any on my channel personally. That option's always open in the future, but I really enjoyed this. The 3 hours just flew by, and I sadly do agree it probably is about time to wrap it up. I mean, 3 hour streams are crazy. Normally, podcasts are only like an hour long, so it was a wild ride, but I really enjoyed it. I'm down to come back on whenever you need another guest. You know how to get a hold of me. I'm sure we'll discuss the future episodes behind the scenes regardless, but yeah, if any of you aren't familiar with my stuff, my name's TheVividKiwi. I do breakdowns, theories, all that sort of stuff on my channel. Usually, I'll take specific moments from each new episode and do videos just solely dedicated to that. And then around the end of the week, I'll do a full episode review. I also try to do trailer breakdowns usually as soon as they come out and I can find the trailer. It's really trying to bite my lip throughout this whole live stream to not spoil what's in the teaser, but I mean, just kind of plug my own stuff. I guess that's the most recent video I have up. So if you're interested in seeing what'll happen next week, feel free to go check out that video, because I don't know, it was a lot of fun to make. There's a lot of exciting things that I talked about in that episode, and I think when you watch that video, you really tell that my energy is just at an all-time high, because I really am excited for episode 606, and I really did like episode 605, so I'm really looking forward to doing all of these in-depth breakdowns on all of these different moments from the episode. So yeah, feel free to check me out. Thank you guys for all of your support. I really enjoyed all the super chats, and I was trying to read the regular chat as much as I could. Love all the support, and yeah, this was really fun. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit before next week. I know Jim is coming back next Tuesday, so we'll see. I don't know if we can. I don't know how many people. It seems like every time we add a person, it adds time, which
Yeah,
it'll depend on what the thing is. But I know he's confirmed, and we'll definitely have you back again. Maybe next week, maybe the week after. We'll see how schedules and everything uh, lineup. But we'll talk about that offline. Thanks
yeah,
again,
for sure.
everyone, for coming out. You can find links to his channel and Gil's stuff in the description. So go there and check that stuff out. I only invite people on who are into this and are, I've talked to personally beforehand. So, I definitely say go check out their stuff. And I'm going to go to my appointment, and I'll say thanks one more time for coming out, and we'll talk to you soon.
Have a good